Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am Peyton Jamison, Chairman. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan and plan map, and other related plans and amendments to the zoning ordinance. Allow me to introduce our board members. To my left is Fred Edwards, Garo Burchett, Paul Moore. To my right is Chris Doty, Mark Bittner, and Noel Carpenter. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks, provided time remains with the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with a staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action is made within 2 years, immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised and the notices have been mailed to property owners affected by this zoning as required by the Milton zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton Mayor and City Council for final disposition. The Mayor and City Council hearing will be held approximately 3.5 weeks from this hearing on the third Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in the Council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us in written form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless requested to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the Milton zoning ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delay. There are no exceptions. At this time, I'll call for public comment. That is any comment that is not related to anything on the current agenda. Do we have any public comment?
No.
Okay. I will close public comment. Before we get to the meeting minutes, I want to just let everyone know, after this meeting, we're going to have a work session to talk about the Greenspace bond, and that will approximately start around midnight after the rezoning. Hopefully about 8 o'clock or so. So feel free to stay for that, and we'll go to approval of the action minutes.
Okay, the first item is January 27, 2016 Planning Commission workshop.
All right.
I move we set the minutes of the January 27, 2016 Planning Commission workshop.
Second it.
Yeah, first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay.
Okay, the next item item is February 24th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
I move that we accept the February 24, 2016 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Second.
All right, first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay.
Okay, the first item is a deferred item. It's RZ 16-02, BC 16-01, 745 Ebenezer Road by Brightwater Homes LLC to rezone from AG1 agricultural to CUP community unit plan to develop 50 single-family homes on 63.57 acres at an overall density of 0.79 units per acre, and a concurrent variance to increase the maximum lot coverage from 20% to 50% for each individual lot from section 64-1141D1B. And Kathy Field will present the presentation.
Hey, Kathy, before you start, Robin, do you guys have a memory drive, or anybody got a spare drive handy? I'm going to put some pictures on it. Can you throw? I'm ready. Thank you, ma'am.
All set? Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. First slide shows, outlined in red, the site in question for tonight. That's fine. The second shows the current zoning for the site, which is AG1. The next slide shows the 2030 future land use map, which calls for this area to be AEE, which is agriculture, equestrian, and estate residential. This is the site plan that was submitted on January 7th. I want to call to your attention on this site plan, because it does not appear on the subsequent ones, but it does appear here, and I'll make reference to it later, is that what is the northeast, north is to the right on the way this plan is laid out, but what is the northeast section of this parcel, you'll see an outline in there, and that is the proposed community septic field. All right, so you see that. Here is the yield plan. As you know, we ask applicants for the CUP to do a yield plan under the AG1 zoning conditions, i.e. this would be 1 acre lots, and the yield shows 50 lots, of which 7 of them are shown, 6 of them are shown along Ebenezer Road. Ebenezer Road being on the left side of this plan. The next one shows the revised conceptual plan that was submitted on February 17th. And then finally, we have a revised plan submitted on March 17th. And you notice down at the bottom, which is where Ebenezer Road is located on this plan, you're seeing 7 lots fronting on Ebenezer Road. The subject site contains 63.57 acres and is undeveloped, although one of the parcels did have a single-family residence adjacent to the lake, which has been demolished. The site is zoned AG1 and is located within the agricultural, equestrian, estate residential designation of the 2030 comp plan. The applicant is requesting a rezoning to CUP, which is community unit plan, to build 50 single-family residences at an overall density of 0.79 units per acre. Based on the applicant's conceptual site plan submitted on March 17, 2016, and a letter of intent received on January 7th, to the Community Development Department, staff offers the following considerations. Development plan, and this makes reference to the required yield plan. In essence, the development plan is the yield plan here. Properties not served by sanitary sewer shall be required to provide a site plan to determine the maximum number of lots on the subject site as follows. The number of lots in the CUP development shall not exceed the number of lots that can be reasonably created with an AG1 zone development at the same site location. The following items shall be submitted to determine the lot yield for the subject property. Indicate all bodies of water and the appropriate buffers. provide a level 3 soil analysis, that is the so-called PERT test that we refer to from time to time, provide a tree survey indicating specimen and heritage trees, indicate the configuration of lots and associated minimum building setbacks, and show approximate location of house footprint on each lot. The applicant has submitted all of the above listed items depicted as a traditional AG1 district subdivision. Based on these parameters, the maximum number of lots that can be developed is 50 lots. Staff also refers to this plan as the yield plan. In terms of the development standards for the CUP, the first standard is no building shall exceed 40 feet in height. In regard to the proposed development, the applicant has not indicated height. Next, the minimum lot area is specified in conditions, and the applicant indicates the minimum lot size shown is 11,250 square feet. I'm sorry, the minimum lot size shown is 11,250 square feet. Next, the minimum CUP development size shall be 4 acres. The applicant responds that the CUP development size is 63.57 acres. The maximum density allowed is 5 units per gross area. The applicant responds the density of the subject site is 0.79 units per acre. Minimum lot width at building line per conditions, the response is 72 feet. Minimum CUP development frontage shall be 35 feet. The applicant exceeds the minimum. The minimum lot frontage shall be 20 feet adjoining a street. The applicant calls for, responds with 20 feet minimum. Minimum heated floor area is specified in conditions, and the applicant proposes 2,400 square feet. Minimum perimeter setback is specified, and that is per the site plan. The following are proposed building setbacks and development standards for individual lots. CUP allows for the applicant to specify building setbacks. So the front yard setback is proposed to be 10 feet, side yard setback 5 feet with a minimum 15-foot separation between buildings, side yard setback adjacent to a street 20 feet, rear yard 20 feet. The applicant has indicated there will be a minimum of 50% open space. Below is the zoning ordinance's definition of open space. Open space means a portion of a site which is permanently set aside for public or private use and will not be developed. The space may be used for passive or active recreation, or may be reserved to protect or buffer natural areas. The term open space includes wooded areas other than required landscape strips and buffers, pathways, walkways, fields, and sensitive environmental areas such as wetlands, etc. The term open space does not include detention facilities and platted residential lots. Other site plan considerations of the applicant's revised conceptual site plan that was submitted on March 17th. The proposed site plan does not indicate sidewalks within the development or along Ebenezer Road. The construction of sidewalks within a residential land use designation of 1 unit or less shall be decided on a case-by-case basis pursuant to Chapter 50 of the Subdivision Code. The applicant has stated that internal walking paths throughout the entire property should be considered in lieu of the sidewalk requirement. Staff notes that Ebenezer Road and its associated right-of-way is in the city of Roswell. Therefore, staff has included transportation conditions to be coordinated with the city of Roswell. The conceptual site plan submitted on March 17th does not show any stormwater management facilities on the site. A conceptual stormwater management plan will be required prior to the submittal of the land disturbance permit. The applicant proposes to utilize a community septic system where each lot will have its own septic tank and the effluent is pre-treated and then applied onto a dedicated site for leaching for the entire community. The site plan indicates the general location of the community septic leaching area in the undeveloped area on the site plan submitted on January 7, 2016, and that is the site plan that I reviewed with you previously in this presentation. Staff notes that this system would be evaluated and permitted by the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, Environmental Protection Division, and not the Fulton County Health Department. In addition, there are conditions included if the request is approved regarding the community septic system. Site plan objectives for the proposed development. It is staff's opinion that in order to preserve the subject site and create a community that is designed with the property and its unique qualities, staff suggests the following objectives when evaluating the proposed site plan. 1, conservation area. The overall amount of open space or conservation area is 50%. The majority is located in the northeast portion of the property. and the staff's opinion that this portion of the property should be developed in order to preserve the rural viewshed along Ebenezer Road. 2, small rural enclave or hamlets. The development pattern appears to be more suburban in character than enclave or hamlets. 3, small residential nodes. There are 3 areas, but they all dead end and do not connect. 4, consider this parcel as this parcel should be considered as part of a larger overall plan for the area. The potential for connecting with adjacent parcels that may be developed in the future has not been shown on the site plan. 5, preserve rural character from the roadways. Although there is approximately 100 feet of viewshed with additional area on the eastern portion of the site adjacent to Ebenezer Road, additional area should be pushed away from the road to protect the existing pasture land and placed in the northeast section of the site. 6, vehicular and pedestrian interconnectivity. It appears there can be easy pedestrian interconnectivity, but vehicular interconnectivity is not shown to adjacent parcels. 7, naturalized detention areas. It appears that the existing pond will be utilized, but further details will be needed. 8, internal trail network. There is an internal trail network on the site. 9, rural architecture or local vernacular. The applicant is in agreement with this type of architecture, but has not agreed to individual building permit approval by the city architect. 10, preserve existing vegetation and topography to the extent possible when siting homes. The applicant has indicated that he is not in agreement for the city arborist to approve each lot's site plan for removal of vegetation, which is not subject to the tree preservation ordinance. 11, variable lot sizes and building locations on the lot. Although there are different lot sizes, they are divided up into 2 locations instead of a variety of sizes on the street. Additionally, the houses are not positioned in a variety of locations. In the staff's recommendation not to support the applicant's revised conceptual site plan submitted March 17, 2016, because it does not meet the above site plan objectives and provide the best solution for developing the site. VC 16-01, to increase the maximum lot coverage from 20% to 50% for each individual lot. The applicant has requested the above concurrent variance to increase the maximum lot coverage based on the fact that the lots are small in size and would not meet the maximum 20% requirement, which is typically attainable when 1 acre lots are developed. Staff does not recommend the submitted site plan by the applicant and therefore recommends denial of VC 16-01. But the request is included in the recommended conditions if the mayor and city council choose to approve the increased lot coverage to 50%. Environmental site analysis. The applicant has included various environmental engineering studies regarding the site, but has not completed the listing of questions on the ESA as required by section 64-2126 of the zoning ordinance. City arborist. At the time of submittal of a land disturbance permit, more detailed evaluation of the specimen trees will be made. It appears that specimen trees were not identified on the eastern portion adjacent to Sweet Apple Road. And staff would like to make a correction to this, in that the yield plan does identify on it specimen trees. So we stand corrected on this one. The next slide shows the increase for students to the various schools due to the development of this site. And and this is the financial modeling results. Based on 50 houses at a value of $500,000 each, the present value of annual net physical impact will be a plus in terms of $243,228. Community zoning information meeting. On January 26th, the applicant was present at the community zoning information meeting held at the Milton City Hall. There were 7 residents from the community in attendance who signed the sign-in sheets. The community stated that they were concerned about the additional traffic that 50 lots would produce and the small lots instead of 1 acre lots. City of Milton Design Review Board courtesy meeting. The applicant will revise plans after community staff meetings and represent to the DRB at its April meeting. Public public participation plan and report. The applicant held their public participation meeting on Monday, February 15th. There were 10 residents in attendance. The applicant provided the required public participation report to the staff on February 19th. Standards of review. Whether or not the proposal will permit a use that is suitable in view of the use and development of adjacent and nearby property. The proposed 50-lot single-family residential subdivision developed at a density of 0.79 units per acre is consistent with adjacent and nearby properties which are scattered single-family residences on large lots. Although the proposed lots are less than 1 acre in size, the distance of the proposed lots and therefore the building setback is more than 50 feet, which is a typical rear building setback for AG1 developed lots. Staff's opinion that the applicant can create a more appropriate development pattern by moving a portion of the lots to the northeast portion of the site where there is no development. This would allow for a larger view shed along Ebenezer Road and eliminate the dead-end cul-de-sacs. 2, whether or not the proposal will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby property. It is staff's opinion that the proposal may not adversely affect existing use or usability of the adjacent properties. It is staff's opinion that the site can be developed so that the lots can be moved away from Ebenezer Road to preserve the rural view shed across the stream to the northeast portion of the site. In addition, there can be groupings of lots with green space in between and the ability to site each house to preserve any appropriate vegetation or topography. 3, whether the property to be affected by the proposal has a reasonable economic use as currently zoned. The subject site may have a reasonable use as currently zoned as AG1. 4, whether the proposal is in conformity with the policies and intent of the land use plan. The 2030 land use plan calls for this area to be agricultural, equestrian, estate residential. The proposed use density, single-family residential at 0.79 units per acre. Although the proposed CUP development conforms to the recommended overall density of 1 unit or less per acre, it does not conform to the following suggested policy intent of the City of Milton Comprehensive Plan if developed with the recommended conditions. We will encourage development that is sensitive to the overall setting of the community and will contribute to our community's character and sense of place. 6, whether there are other existing or changed conditions affecting the use and development of the property which give supporting grounds for either approval or disapproval of the proposal. It is staff's opinion that the proposed conceptual site plan submitted on March 17th by the applicant does not provide the best site plan for the subject site considering the site's pristine rural character. 7, whether the zoning proposal will permit a use which can be considered environmentally adverse to the natural resources, environment, and citizens of the City of Milton. The proposed use may not be environmentally adverse to the natural resources, environment, and citizens of the city, but it is the opinion of staff that the homes can be better sited on the property to preserve the natural resources, such as trees and unique topography of the site. Conclusion. Based on the above analysis of the proposed development, staff recommends denial of RZ 16-02 and VC 16-01. If the mayor and city council choose to approve the applicant's conceptual site plan submitted on March 17th, the attached recommended conditions should be approved. And these are: if this petition is approved by the mayor and city council, the rezoning of property located at 745 Ebenezer Road should be approved for CUP conditional, subject to the owner's agreement to the following enumerated conditions. Where these conditions conflict with the stipulations and offerings contained in the letter of intent, these conditions shall supersede unless specifically stipulated by the mayor and city council. 1, to the owner's agreement to restrict the use of the subject property as follows: single-family detached dwellings and accessory uses and structure. B, no more than 50 total dwelling units at a maximum density of 0.79 units per acre, whichever is less, based on the total acreage zone. Approved lot units total are not guaranteed. The developer is responsible through site engineering at the time of the application for the land disturbance permit to demonstrate that all lots units within the approved development meet or exceed all the development standards of the City of Milton. The total lot units yield of the subject site shall be determined by this final engineering. 2, to the owner's agreement to abide by the following: to the revised site plan submitted on March 17th, said site plan is conceptual only and must meet or exceed the requirements of the zoning ordinance. B, all areas which are not part of an individual lot and held in common shall be maintained by a mandatory homeowners association whose proposed documents of incorporation shall be submitted to the Community Development Director for review and approval prior to the recording of the first final plat. 3, to the owner's agreement to the following site development considerations. A, minimum lot size, 11,250 square feet, minimum lot width at building line, 72 feet, minimum lot frontage, 20 feet, minimum heating floor area per unit, 2,400 square feet, minimum front yard setback, 10 feet, minimum side yard setback, 5 feet with a 15-foot building separation. Minimum side yard setback adjacent to a street, 20 feet, minimum rear yard, 20 feet. Setback adjacent to AG1 per the site plan, minimum perimeter setback for the development per the site plan. Prior to issuance of each building permit, the city architect shall approve exterior elevations and placement of the building on the lot. Prior to issuance of each building permit or individual grading permit, the city arborist shall approve the number and type of trees and vegetation that can be removed from the lot. Provide a minimum of 50% open space, maximum lot coverage of 50% for each individual lot. In order to provide a defined building construction area, provide a plan at the time of land disturbance permit submittal that indicates the areas of disturbance, including grading and tree removal for the site. All areas not disturbed or graded shall remain in natural state. To the owner's agreement to abide by the following requirements, dedications, and improvements. Dedicate at no cost to the City of Milton or the City of Roswell prior to the approval of a land disturbance permit. Sufficient land is required by the City of Roswell Department of Transportation. Proposed right-of-way shall be located no less than 16 feet behind the edge of pavement of Ebenezer Road. Provide 5-foot wide sidewalk with a minimum 10-foot wide grass strip along entire property frontage of Ebenezer Road, as approved by the City of Roswell Transportation Department. Dedicate at no cost to the City of Milton sufficient land as necessary to provide for a 50-foot right-of-way from the proposed roadway to the northwest property line for future interparcel connection, as required and approved by the City of Milton Public Works Department. Access to the site shall be subject to the approval of the City of Milton Public Works Department and the City of Roswell Department of Transportation. Access to the site shall be subject to the approval of the City of Milton Public Works Department and the City of Roswell Department of Transportation. To the owner's agreement to abide by the following. Owners shall be required to have an approved stormwater concept plan prior to submission of a land disturbance permit application. Owner agrees to limit the number of homes adjacent to the view shed along Ebenezer Road to no more than 7 homes. Owner agrees to the following items regarding the community septic system. Owner shall submit a perpetual maintenance and operations bond sufficient to cover the replacement of all essential mechanical equipment and provide for a minimum of 3 years of contract operations services. The perpetual maintenance and operations bond shall be in a form and amount acceptable to the city and from a surety rated no less than B, I guess that's B double B.
Plus.
B plus plus.
Just B plus plus, okay. B plus plus by AM Best. Owner shall submit a trust indenture in a form accessible to the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, and the City of Milton shall have the authority to approve the trustee. The owner shall provide written statements indicating that the proposed trustee's relationship to the grantor does not create a conflict of interest for the trustee, and that the trustee is willing and capable of the responsibilities established by the trustee indenture. Owner shall submit to the city prior to the city council approval confirmation from Fulton County that the proposed septic system is in compliance with the standards of the Health and Wellness Department and the Fulton County Sewerage Regulations. City shall have the right to review and approve the design of any community septic system proposed for the project prior to the issuance of a land disturbance permit. No expansion of the system other than as may be required by the appropriate regulatory authority shall be permitted, and no lots other than those shown on the approved site plan shall be added to the community septic system. Neighborhood covenants shall be prepared and recorded that provided that the system shall not be expanded to serve lots or development outside of the lots on the approved site plan. That is my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for staff before we have the applicant come up?
Can I go ahead and ask for any other cards? Because we're going to close getting any more comment cards at this point. So if you have a card, please bring it up.
Robin, while they're doing that, I've got a question for you. There were recommended staff conditions in the packet that we got originally, and then this evening we were handed another set of.
That's from the applicant.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So our set of conditions that we recommend if you decide to approve it are already in the packet and staff report,
Okay.
which you should have, correct?
Yeah.
I have a couple extras.
So this came from the applicant
Yes,
tonight?
along with the site plan, yes. And in italics is what they would like to propose to change.
Italics or,
Yes.
oh, I see, okay.
And bold, okay.
You okay? You good? All right, can we have the applicant, Robin?
Mr. Chair, before we get started, we would appreciate it so we don't get pressed in trying to do a speed dial through, to have up to 5 additional minutes
Oh.
to the time frame.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. I mean, we're gonna, based on the opposition, you'll have you'll have the additional time as well, so we can up it to 15 minutes. That's perfectly
That's
fine.
That's great. Appreciate it very
Yep.
much. Well, Kathy has taken you on through the application, and I'd like to point out the specificity of the revision and site plan that was made on March 17th, which is the site plan in front of you. That took the viewshed number of lots along Ebenezer from 12 down to 7. And if you really look at the lot yield plan that was done under the AG1 district, there truly are 7 lots that you can have a visual view of from Ebenezer. One sort of at the corner skewed a little bit, but is within view of Ebenezer. So we are of the opinion that what we have done is to have presented a plan that has, from a visual standpoint, same number of lots that would be done under the AG1 permitted development plan. That's the lot yield plan. Hitting to the heart of the staff review and analysis under paragraph 4, whether we are in compliance with the comp plan. And we are absolutely diametrically opposed in opinion to the position that staff has taken as to policy and intent, saying we will encourage development that is sensitive to the overall setting of the community and will contribute to our community's character and sense of place. We feel that's exactly what this site plan has done, and with the development plan that's on the table pursuant to that site plan. The northeast area of this property that is to the east of the creek and massive change in topography that accompanies that creek on over to Sweet Apple is the area that really is not appropriate for development and would be actually in derogation of a sensitive and overall site plan development were it to be undertaken as been suggested by staff. So we feel we really have put on the table the most sensitive site plan. With that, I would ask Charlotte Bosworth to step up with the applicant and walk you through with more specificity exactly the development plan and the sense and feel of the housing, and particularly the presence of the homes that would be along Ebenezer. Thank you.
Good evening, Charlie Bostwick, 227 Hammond Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to tell our story this evening.
Will you say your city and state just for
Oh, I'm
For
sorry.
the record.
Sandy Springs.
Okay.
So we are Brightwater Homes. We're an award-winning custom design build company, building homes at an average price of $900,000. We design place-appropriate architecture with classically trained architects. We're currently building award-winning farmhouse architecture in several Milton locations, and proud of our work here. We're also environmentalists. We build green homes. We design, develop, and construct using sustainable practices. We partner with the Georgia Native Plant Society on all our developments. We truly care about the land and how we impact it. We're here to ask your support to build a better place on a very special property. This is a property made even more special by Celestine Sidler in her book about Sweet Apple. With your approval, we can preserve the native flora and fauna of this land. To be clear, the decision tonight is not about whether to develop this property or not. is not even about the density or the number of homes. The decision tonight is about 50 AG1 lots or 50 CUP home sites. Either way, there'll be 50 homes built on 64 acres. We have a fully engineered septic plan showing that 50 AG1 lots are truly buildable. For the first time, you have a builder, developer, and a landowner offering to voluntarily preserve the equestrian nature of Milton without increasing density. Reminder that one of the biggest reasons why the CSO was rejected was that this conservation approach was mandatory. We're doing this voluntarily. I think that's important to recognize here. This is not something that's going to be required or take away from a landowner's rights. With our proposed CUP plan, we'll not only build high-end homes priced from the $700s to $1 million, but we'll also preserve over 35 acres of precious natural land with native flora and fauna, including the oldest growth hardwood trees on the site, most of the ferns, ground cedar, trillium, native azaleas, dogwoods, etc. on the part that we're preserving. Over 100 species of plants have already been identified on this property. With AG1 lots, we will have to destroy much of this natural landscape and bury 300 feet of naturally flowing creek in a pipe. Our plan is about saving something special. We're here to ask that together we save this precious land while allowing for a commercially viable development to be built. I want to say again, this is a density neutral plan. We're not asking for any additional density. We're creating a place where families can have 35 acres to enjoy, not just the 1 acre that they live on. Since our last presentation to you, we have met with staff and continue to improve our land plan. We've greatly reduced the number of homes along Ebenezer Road. We now have the same number of homes along Ebenezer that would be allowed with the current AG1 zoning. I point out to you that the previous developer who had this property had an LDP to put 8 homes along Ebenezer. We have 7. We've also continued to push these homes further away from Ebenezer. The homes will now be at least twice the distance from Ebenezer as currently allowed. Most of them three times what AG1 allows. We'll be creating some empty nester targeted homes where the owners can benefit from the many acres of enjoyable land without having a huge piece of property to maintain. We hear constantly from Milton residents who want to stay in Milton, but need a home that isn't designed for a growing family. These empty nesters will also have a lower traffic and school impact. Our plan applies many of the goals of the 2030 Comprehensive Use Plan. With our plan, we will permanently protect over 35 acres. We'll create green space around the homes. We'll preserve trees with a buffer around the perimeter of the site. We'll leave a 100-foot buffer of pasture and trees along Ebenezer Road, maintaining the equestrian look. The neighborhood will have many great amenities, including 2 miles of trails for walking, running, and nature study, an interactive guide to native flora and fauna, a community swimming pool, a lakeside park with fishing and a fire pit. This has been a long and collaborative process. We started with a land plan that crossed the creek and included 55 homes. We recognize that crossing the creek would destroy the very best part of this property and create a highway-scale destruction of this area. It would violate the very reason we are asking for the CUP zoning, to save the precious flora and fauna on the most environmentally sensitive part of the property. This is a current site, and this next slide will show you what would happen with AG1 with the creek crossing across there. We destroy the beautiful area that's down at the end of this lake and the trees that are down beyond it. We've had many meetings and site tours with staff, neighbors, the ARB, and some of you. Through input from staff and city volunteers, we reduced our lot count such that we are not asking for any additional density. We increased the minimum lot size. We increased the buffer on Ebenezer twice. It's, like I said, 100 foot versus 0 with AG1. The setback is going to be about 130 versus the 50 with AG1. We moved our recreational activities. We reduced the number of homes along Ebenezer. We adjusted our street type to include rural street cross section at the entrance throat and along Ebenezer. We saved hundreds of trees, maybe even thousands. None of this can be done with the current zoning. We now have the support of our immediate neighbors and most of the nearby neighbors. I'm sure you'll hear from some that oppose this evening, but the vast majority do support us. Here are a number of images of the type of architecture we will use for the inspirations and guidance. Some of these are our new homes in Milton. Others are examples of nearby homes. I've shown you these before. I mostly included them here for the record as part of the zoning, so you've got those. I now want to take a moment to talk about our septics. I know that's been very much a concern of many people, and I want to make sure that we alleviate most of those concerns tonight, because I think we can. I know there's been a lot of misunderstanding around community septic systems, and I wanted to point out that there are some distinct advantages to community systems versus individual systems. Unlike individual systems, community systems require a state-level permit. Community systems require monthly monitoring by a state licensed contractor, including monitoring of groundwater with test wells to fully protect others with wells nearby. You don't get that with individual systems. The reports that are done are sent to the state for monthly review. Community systems have programs in place to correct any issues that arise. The system we propose can be installed without clearing trees for the drain field. This is what this is about, protecting the existing land. The system we propose is very similar to individual systems. This is the specific system we're looking at. Very similar to individual systems that many of you have, if not all of you. Each system will have its own septic tank, just like individual systems. The field line will be the same type used on individual systems when trees are trying to be preserved on individual lots. We will not remove trees to do this. There's nothing unusual, even proprietary, about the system we propose. I can't bring you any additional information from some newfangled company that's got a better way of doing it, because we're proposing to alleviate any of that risk and put the same sort of systems that's in 90% of the lots in Milton. The only difference is that from individual systems is the effluent is collected into a single distribution field. Otherwise, it's the same. We've reviewed the community septic idea with many of our neighbors with wells who have expressed that they now prefer this system versus 50 individual systems. Understand that there's at least one gentleman who's still concerned about this, and we just simply haven't had a chance to talk with him one-on-one, but I think he'll understand it once we have a chance to explain it with more detail. The staff has given us a lot of great ideas through this process. We're prepared to accommodate most of their site development considerations in their recommended conditions. We've also added a few more restrictions to ourselves to help ease any concerns over septic and the rural nature of Ebenezer. I've distributed to you a slightly revised alternative conditions.
Okay, it's about 10 minutes, so if the,
Oh, we added 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
was, thank you.
Okay. I can wrap
Start it
up
up,
fairly
yeah.
soon anyway.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
If you, okay. I mean, I can finish. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. I have distributed to you a slightly revised alternative conditions. We have italicized the change so that they stand out. We're prepared to meet all of these conditions and ask that you vote to approve the version distributed. The main changes to the conditions distributed are in 3, K, and L. Unfortunately, we cannot accept the approval of architecture and site placement of each home. We'll be making a multi-million-dollar investment and must have architectural control over our product design. But as I noted in there, we're happy to submit it, and we'll be submitting all of the images we had tonight and agree to be in keeping with those. In 4A, II, and in 4D, we listen to the neighbors and others in the city and ask that we leave Ebenezer Road the rural street design that it is and that Milton is asking for. Let's not add curb and sidewalks to this area and make it a suburban look. This would not be in keeping with the equestrian pasture that we are preserving. This is appropriate for Roswell, and it's great there, but it's not what Milton is asking for. And then in 5C, III, we'll obtain Fulton County approval if they are to be governing body, but I believe the staff reported and what our engineers tell us, this will not be a county permit. There won't be an opportunity for them to be involved, but of course we will have a state-level permit, which will be more restrictive. Either way, we'll seek approval before the LDP. And in conclusion, one more time, this is a density-neutral plan. There are others who will spin it in a different character than that, but either way, AG1 or with the CUP, it's 50 lots on 64 acres. This is not a conservation zoning request. This is a best practices land plan through the CUP process, which is conditional to the specific site. The choice is AG1 with no buffers and more clearing, or CUP, preserving buffers and green space with a safer septic system. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
I have 5 comment cards in support. So just-
Okay.
The first speaker is Walter Recook.
This is all in support, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, okay.
Good evening. My name's Walt Cook. I live at 615 Scarlet Oak Trail in Milton, Georgia. I'm in favor of CUP projects in general. Just like the applicant said, this is not a requirement to have a conservation subdivision, but this is something that the applicant is requesting. Overall, this is a project in which there's going to be a lot more open space left, and as having developed conservation subdivision, I think this is benefit to the community. We've got many great CUP communities in the city of Milton: White Collins, Triple Crown, Akiro, Kingsley Estate, Crooked Creek, and all of them are considered some of those have much smaller lots, in particular Crooked Creek, but yet it has a good bit of open space as well. Having so much open space, which is the 50% that they commented on, I think is going to be beneficial. Again, they've increased the amount of open space adjoining Ebenezer Road, the landscaping berms and such along Ebenezer can continue to help the view shed and not be a problem for the adjoining landowners. Asking for some of these issues for having architectural control by the city as well as site development does not seem to make sense. I know of no community that asked for something like that from a residential standpoint. Perhaps in a commercial situation it's understandable, but this is a situation that once you drive into the subdivision, this is a situation where those individual buyers will have a choice whether they want it or not the city deciding what they think looks good. The individual owners are the ones who make it, and the owner himself is going to be the one who's got to decide what's best. And lastly, on the issues with bonding and such for the water and sewer issues, I think, again, asking for a bond may not work. I think you're better off just having a certain amount of money funded to the HOA, and bonds can only typically be bought for 3 years. Then you have to continually buy them. I think, again, you create a sinking fund. That's what most private street communities do. We create a sinking fund. We put that money towards the streets. Developer funds it initially, and then the homeowners themselves fund it over a 15 or 20-year period for whatever the life cycle is. Ask for a life cycle study to be done, then fund those deficiencies so that eventually the homeowners take it over. There's money in their account for that, not totally funded, but sufficiently funded for a certain period, and then they will kick in and fund it as they go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have 19 seconds left.
All right, we can add 5 minutes.
Okay, so we're going to add another 5 minutes, so the opposition will also have a total of 20 minutes as well. The next speaker is, I believe, Jake Meredith. Or Jane Meredith, sorry, I can't read it. Jane.
Hi, my name is Jane Meredith. My husband and I purchased 5 acres, 735 at Ebenezer Road. We are the ones most directly affected by this development. And when we were building our retirement home there, and the perfect scenario for us would be that no one ever developed that land. That's not going to happen. We know that 50 houses are going to be built there. Bridgewater Home has been very solicitous of us and our input, and we do feel like they have the best intentions for that property. For us, we want to have the CUP passed. And the reason being is that it would preserve the nature of that spectacular property. I walk it almost every day that I'm in town. And to see a culvert and a bridge built over there would destroy the whole nature of that property. It would destroy the fauna, you would destroy the wildlife, and there's so much wildlife back there. I currently live in Brookfield Country Club. A lot of the lots in there are 1 acre, and it certainly doesn't reflect what I think you want the nature of Milton and the culture to be. So developing a development with just 1 acre lots doesn't ensure that you have that kind of setting or culture for what I think that Milton desires. That's one reason we bought in Milton. We looked at a lot of property, and we specifically looked for property in Milton. So my husband are very supportive of Bridgewater Homes and would like to see CUP pass.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jack Linden.
Good evening. My name is Jack Linden. I live at 14810 East Bluff Road, Milton. First off, I would just like to point out, I'm sure you're all aware of this, but in our code, the CUP starts off by giving the scope and intent of the CUP. And there are 6 items listed under the intended use for a COP, and I'd like to read 2 of them to you. Number 2 is to encourage flexible and creative concepts in site planning. Number 3 is to preserve the natural amenities of the land by encouraging scenic and functional open areas. That, I think, is what this plan does to a very large extent. The other issue I'd like to bring up is the issue of the community septic systems. As you probably are all aware, at the past Monday's work session of the City Council, it was pointed out that our code does in fact allow the use of community septic systems. That's found in section 50-184, section B, and it says there, when a public sanitary sewer is not accessible, and alternative methods of sewer disposal for each lot or a community sewage disposal system may be used. So the issue of whether or not you can approve this based on a community septic system, I think, is moot. The third issue I'd like to talk about just briefly is the issue we've heard discussed any number of times about the potential financial repercussions that could come from a failure of one of these systems. It's interesting, with all these discussions, you never hear about the tremendous failure rate for standard septic systems. But if we just look at the potential failure of community septic systems, it seems to me that it ought to be very easily possible to develop a set of guidelines that would protect the city from any financial harm. As you may be aware, we do that now for drainage systems. Kathy, this is a copy of the paragraph that appears on the front of every plat that's approved in Milton. And basically what it says is that it gives the Public Works Department the authority to go into any subdivision where a drainage system fails, repair that system, and then charge the homeowners for that repair. Now, people have claimed that the potential damage done by a community septic system is gigantic. In fact, should be compared with other potential failures. In my community of North Valley, we have a 600,000 gallon retention pond held back by an earthen dam. If that were to fail, that would cost far in excess of what any community septic system would cost to repair. And there's a system in place in our state code, in our city code, that allows for that to be taken care of without the city being harmed financially. And finally, I would just say I'm a little bit at odds here with the idea of contradicting.
How many more speakers do we have?
We have 2 more in addition.
Okay, and what's the time we're at total?
We're at 20 total right now.
Okay, let's add 3. Let's do 5 more minutes and do 2 more.
I'm bothered by the fact that I have to contradict what the Community Development Department has said, and I do agree that there are some issues that I think could have been done better with this, in terms of creating some lots on the other side of the ravine and spread the houses out somewhere. But I think the thing you have to think about is that the alternative here to this system is the AG1 sprawl that we're so used to here, which is going to create homes closer to the roads, closer to the sidelines, and probably, if history has been any guide, massive clear cutting of trees in order to put all those houses in. This would mitigate many of those effects. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Margaret Lutens.
Hello, Can I just clarify the time before I get started? It's at 9:12, so I have until it hits 5. So
Well, not yet. We have one more.
We have one more speaker, so maybe do like 3 minutes or something. That'd be great.
I will try my absolute best.
Thank
My
you.
name is Margaret Newtons, and I live at 3515 Peacock Road. I live right around the corner from here in a townhome. And since I am so close here to City Hall, this gives me the ability to come to many more city meetings than a lot of people who live further afield do. I recognize that people are busy and there's travel time and not everybody can come here to attend every meeting. And I have been here from the beginning with Charlie's project, having come to a meeting in support of a neighbor. I want to say that I've noticed a pattern in the meetings as I've gone forward, that people that tend to be in support of something will come out once or twice and then stay at home. And people who are opposed or like to complain about things come frequently and tend to get other people worked up about the issue at hand, which may or may not directly affect them. And I would like to mention Jane that spoke earlier. She is one of the people that is directly affected by this. And while everybody's voice is important, I believe that the people that are closest to the parcel at hand need to have their voice heard more loudly than others. And I will say that this is in part driven by having attended the Greenspace bond work session last time, where there were objections from people who lived further away from where the proposed improvements were going to go in. So I respect that everybody has a voice to say, but if you're too far away from something to care to pay for it, then you should equally be too far away if it's not right in your backyard. Let's please use the same standard of according weight to people's comments. So I think that's important. And in regard to the green space, I'd like to point out that what this particular builder is trying to do is preserving green space, and doing so without any additional cost to a taxpayer. It doesn't matter whether the green space is private or whether it's public. It does the same thing. It preserves the trees, it preserves the lake, it provides the wildlife corridors. So I think that that's very important that we support this particular builder. And I recognize that what this builder is doing on this particular parcel may not work everywhere. I see, as someone who's just lived in the city for 3 years and live in a townhome on this side of Highway 9 in Milton, that I found his presentation very, very appealing. I'd like to sell my townhome and go move there. It looked absolutely wonderful there, and I recognize that what they're doing there may not work at other places, and we shouldn't judge what they want to do here and extrapolate that to all the undeveloped parcels everywhere. I want to mention that I have gone out in our community to drive around, and I noticed that at the corner of Birmingham Highway and Providence, there is a new development where the houses are very, very close to the road. And this is an AG1 permitted development. So saying this needs to be developed AG1 does not necessarily get rid of the problem that you're hoping to avoid. And in respect to respect, I appreciate that this builder is trying to respect the land, and I think that respect is something that we're a little short of in this city. As somebody who lives in a townhome, perhaps people don't realize that how arrogant some people sound when they talk about people who live in townhomes or houses that are less than 1 acre, that those are not viable living conditions. We have a lot of diversity here in Milton, and perhaps we should take a step back and just consider respect for our fellow residents as well as the environment. Thank you.
Okay, we're right at the 5-minute mark.
All right, let's let the last person come up.
We'll just
And
add
if,
it on.
yeah, I'll add 2 minutes and let's stick to this rezoning,
Okay.
please.
And it's Francia Linden.
My name is Francia Linden. I live at 14810 East Bluff Road in Milton. And there are just two things I want to address. One is that some of the information that has been widely distributed to the neighborhood I find incredibly inflammatory and assumptive, and that is when you say something like, as you know, community septic is not a mature technology. Other localities report a high failure rate, and some have banned it because of its unreliability. I have spent almost a day looking for one community that has banned community septic, and I can't find it. So these kinds of things that go out to the neighborhood assuming things don't give any kind of detail that validate those kinds of statements. And so they're, to me, they can't be substantiated. In terms of septic systems, the rate of failure among individual septic systems ranges from 20% to 32%, depending on the age of the system, and that's almost across the board. That goes for Michigan, it goes for North Carolina, Ohio, Georgia. So the only state that has any firm data on failure rate is Massachusetts, which requires that individual septic systems be checked before a house is sold. So they have to be perkable at the time of the house sale. So they have good data on this, and their data supports the 20% failure rate for individual systems, and that is the only data that I can find that relates to septic systems. As far as community septic systems go, we have two here in Milton that have not failed. One is the one connected with Birmingham Hopewell Elementary School, and the other is with Summit Hill Elementary School, and both of those systems are community septics that have worked well under the Georgia EPD. I am in favor of Charlie's development with the recommendations that city staff has made for changes. But I think that this is a remarkable opportunity for this city to finally recognize that there is a serious problem with the way AG1 has been implemented over the last 5 or 6 years, with all of the clear cutting and the loss of the forest canopy and the loss of any rural character. So I'm very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have about almost additional 3 minutes for a total of 28.
Okay.
For the opposition. Okay. We'll start on the opposing viewpoint.
Yep.
Okay. The first speaker is Scott Sawyer.
My name is Scott Sawyer. I live at 787 Quarterpath Lane. I want to speak in opposition to denial of the variance request from AG1 Community Unit Plan for the Ebenezer Road project.
Oh, what's the city? Sorry. Milton?
Milton, yes.
Okay, sorry.
In December 2015, the community expressed their desire to have one house on 1 acre lots. Nothing has changed since that time. The builder should build 1 house per acre on the buildable land. This is Milton's current AG1 standard. I suspect that due to the topography of the land, the builder can only build 50 houses on 30 acres, not 60 acres. They are requesting a variance to increase density to make more profit. And if you look at 30 homes at $500,000 each, for example, that's a $15 million development. 50 homes at just $400,000 each, that's $20 million development. So that's $5 million more with smaller homes clustered on smaller lots. And actually, the homes are more like 700,000. So you can see that a lot of this is about increased profit and purchase price to acquire the land, I think. So I request you please deny the variance request for increased density and keep Milton beautiful and less developed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Monica Chambers.
My name is Monica Chambers. I live at 715 Ebenezer Road, so Milton. So I am one of the people directly affected, and I am against this. And I'm against it for a couple of reasons. One, I believe the lot size is inconsistent with the homes in the area. I think that affects our property values. Part of why we chose to become part of City of Milton was because we believed you would be protecting our property values. Secondly, and my big personal thing is the community septic system. I've also done a lot of research, and I can tell you places in Georgia where they have failed. And the failure rate of an individual septic system is still an issue with the community septic system. Because what causes a septic system to fail is the individual homeowner not doing their pumping of their individual septic tank. That causes the field to back up and the field to fail. That field is going to have 50 homes septic in it. That is right behind my property. I'm on a well. Jane is on a well. Everyone around there is on a well. And if it fails, you're talking about 50 homes sewage failing on the back of my property. That's the smell. That gets into contaminated water. And then who's paying for it? The bond, as you said, as one person said, yeah, that only covers 3 years. So I have a big concern about 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road when the septic tanks are more likely to fail. The builder is not going to be concerned with that because they're going to be long gone by then. The individual homeowners, the homeowners association, let's say it fails once. There goes all their reserves, and then now it fails again 10 years later. Who's paying for it then? They won't have the money there. And if the city has to come in, which you would, getting it back from them on assessments is going to be very difficult. It is a very expensive process. I have 4 children. I have built this property as our dream home, as our last home. We plan to be there for the next 30 to 40 years. So in the long-term respect, while I do respect that he is trying to make an effort in keeping the green space and keeping the frontage of Ebenezer rural, I do believe, like the last person said, that this is a matter of trying to squunch the homes into an area that is more buildable. If he can build on all 50 on 1 acre lots and the individual septic homes and one fails, that's one septic tank failing on their property. It's not going to affect mine or any of our neighbors. So in that regards, I respectfully request y'all to decline. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Laura Bentley.
I'm Laura Bentley, 2500 Bethany Church Road, Milton. I'm opposed to introducing community septic as a workaround to our AG1 zoning. I think y'all know that our own city attorney mentioned that Forsyth County has banned community septic. I'm opposed to the reduction of lot sizes in the pasture area, which is the view of the Ebenezer Road residents who purchased their properties with the understanding that this land was zone AG1. Changing the zoning on them is unfair and as no hardship has been demonstrated. I'm opposed to the increase from 20% to 50% from the house to lot ratio. And I agree with staff's recommendation for denial and strongly encourage you not to approve this rezoning from AG1 to CUP and uphold our comprehensive land use plan for the Ebenezer Road area. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Tim Becker.
Tim Becker, 15625 Canterbury Chase, Milton, Georgia. Good evening. My name is Tim Becker, and I am a proud member of the Milton Coalition. We are a nonpartisan group of concerned citizens advocating for clean, competent, and courageous government. Tonight we are speaking in opposition to the Conservation Subdivision Ordinance, subdivision being proposed at 745 Ebenezer Road. You are probably going to hear the same arguments repeatedly tonight, and they bear repeating. However, I'm going to try to put forward some different arguments. First, the Ebenezer application is just achieving the goals of the CSO via other means, rezoning and variances. It is an abuse of our laws in Milton. This rezoning and variance application is actually worse than the CSO because it lacks the CSO stipulations and restrictions. So let me get into why you should vote against this application. First, council voted 7-0 against the CSO barely 3 months ago. And unless council tells you it has changed its mind, I believe you are obligated to vote this down. Second, the citizens of Milton have clearly stated that they do not want conservation subdivisions. They oppose the central elements of the CSO. They do not want cluster homes. They do not want higher density. They do not want community septic. They do not want acceleration of development in Milton. They see what some council members cannot see or will not see, that conservation subdivisions are a scam. They are a profit maximization scheme meant to open up marginal land to development. There is a reason that the investors and developers that have owned 745 Ebenezer Road property for over a decade have not developed it. The land is marginal. With a conservation subdivision, Brightwater has found the sweet spot on the land where it will cram homes. Milton gets the leftovers, which are claimed as Greenspace. This is known in environmental circles as greenwash. I wanted to go off script here and talk about a few other things. If you want to see a conservation subdivision up close, 10 minutes away from this very proposed development, go to Woodview and Woodstock. I guarantee if you go look at that and you come back and you tell me that's what you want in Milton, I'm going to tell you to go see a psychiatrist. Second, it's been stated here by a couple of people that nobody down on that road, or everybody down on that road is supportive of this, or virtually everybody, maybe one person. Well, we've already heard one speaker tonight, okay? There are 6 people that have contacted Milton Coalition and told us that they are opposed to this. So the opposition is growing down there. I don't think that a lot of due diligence was spent trying to, determine whether people really wanted this or not. And the last thing is we've heard tonight that communities have not banned this, but our own city attorney told us on Monday night that Forsyth County is not allowing community septic anymore. And he told us one of the reasons for that was the technology was failing. And we've had a few people in our group actually call other localities around the city of Milton, and they're confirming that there are other localities that are completely against community septic. It is not a mature technology. I've worked with technology my entire life, and from very early stage technologies to mature technologies, this is not a mature technology. So please listen to the citizens, and please listen to logic. Please tune out the developers. They are the classic wolves in sheep's clothing. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Catherine Smith.
Hi. I think I emailed all of you guys on Monday night after the last session on Monday. But my name is Catherine Smith, and I live at 608 Easy Goer Lane in Milton, Georgia. I just recently relocated to Milton when my husband's job moved him down to Georgia last summer. I had a choice of where I was going to purchase my home. I live in Triple Crown, and I do not think this project, as it's proposed with the revised plan, is anything like my home. I have mature trees, I have a lake, I have beautiful walking paths. I consider it, coming from Massachusetts, the perfect green space. When I chose Milton specifically, I chose it because of the good schools and the aesthetics of the area. I liked that the homes had to be built on 1-acre lots. They were not on top of each other. I specifically did not pick Johns Creek or Alpharetta due to the traffic, the large amount of high-density housing in those towns, even though those towns also had great high schools. They have these large, huge homes on these small lots, and they just don't have the feel of the high-end home that I was looking for in Milton, and therefore I chose my home in Milton. I'm opposed to the zoning variance converting the property from AG1 to the community unit plan because I don't think we need more housing in Milton that would require a variance from the minimum lot requirement. As the builder stated, 50 homes will be built either way, and I think that's exactly what they should do. If the town allows this proposal to go through, we would be going down a slippery slope where more developers would in the future propose similar developments that would drastically change the look and feel of Milton. If the town did not allow such future developers to build in a similar manner, the city would be opening the town up to lawsuits. I'm also opposed to this variance for housing, just for housing space sake on small lots, because I don't want to open up the town to high-density housing due to the impact that it would have on our schools. I come from a town in Massachusetts that was forced to allow high-density housing due to certain state requirements with respect to affordable housing in our town, and that increased student population drastically changed the performance standards of our community. We were a really high U.S. News and World Report school, and we went down because we had too many kids coming into our schools. We couldn't accommodate them, and our standards in our schools declined. And I do not want that to happen in Milton. I'm not opposed to allowing a variance for AG1 minimum lot size, but only when the need is due to mixed-use development, such as the Crabapple area, which I love. There is a high-density housing, retail, and restaurant development, and this allows high-density housing with a smart purpose that allows the city to have the retail and restaurants that it desperately needs, allows high-density housing, and it's a win for the city and not just for the developer. So, in conclusion, Milton does not need this additional housing on smaller lots that the developer is proposing, and I respectfully request that they deny the zoning variance. Thank you.
Thank you. How much more time do we have left, and how many more speakers?
See, we've only used about 12 minutes.
Okay.
So the next speaker is Julie Zonner Bailey.
How many more, Robin?
Yeah, how many more do we have?
12 minus 28 is...
But how many more speakers do we have?
I'm sorry. 2 more
Okay.
after
Okay.
Julie.
Okay. I think we got it.
Good evening. My name is Julie Zonner Bailey, and I live at 255 Hickory Flat Road, and that's Milton, Georgia 30004. I respectfully request that you deny RZ 1602 and VC 1601. The reasons this application and concurrent variance should be denied are as follows. Staff recommends denial of the petitioner's application for a multitude of reasons that have already been articulated. I support all of those reasons for denial. This petition is in direct conflict with the comprehensive land use plan. This land that's up for rezoning is zoned AG1 within the AEE, the Agricultural, Equestrian, and Estate Lots District, as stated on page 11 of 23 of the current staff analysis before you. As such, it should have a minimum of 1 acre per home. AG1 in the Agricultural, Equestrian, and Estate Lots was always intended for a minimum of 1 acre, not a quarter of an acre lot or less than a quarter of an acre lot. This is reason enough to deny this petition. High-density lots are not appropriate for AG1 land in Milton, period. This rezoning is inconsistent with adjacent and nearby properties that are single-family residences on large lots. Those nearby properties are either 1 acre or even larger than 1 acre minimums. The distance of the proposed lots are in many instances less than 50 feet from adjacent properties, which is in direct conflict with the AG1 development standards. This zoning is in direct conflict with the City of Milton's policy of protecting the rural viewshed, page 19 of 23 of the current staff analysis. The subject site has a reasonable economic use as currently zoned, i.e., if it were to be developed as AG1 land, which it currently is. The yield plan reflected is not an accurate depiction, given the lots are so small. The density should be based instead on the land on which the 50 homes are placed, rather than on the gross density. We heard an earlier applicant speak and say that of the 50 homes, 35 would be set aside. So the math tells me that that would be for 50 homes on only 28 acres. That's extremely dense. That is not rural. That's not in keeping with the residential area of Milton that is zoned AG1. I do not believe that 50 homes could be built reasonably on this parcel based on the actual topography, the specimen trees that at least previously staff had indicated had not been fully identified, the streams, the pond, etc. Please ask for actual densities of each of the lots of this plan rather than just the gross density. As an example, less than 12,000 square feet per home is hardly rural. In terms of the applicant not being willing or agreeing to the city arborist to approve each lot's site plan for removal of vegetation, nor being willing to have building permits approved. It's another issue that indicates that the applicant is in fact not as willing as they might first purport to work with the city staff. And I just want to mention that this will indeed impact all of AG1 land. I know there was a speaker that said that it only impacts those that are immediately next door. That's not true. We all know that land use policies impact all yards, all community members, all citizens, whether you're immediately adjacent to or not. And so when we take a CUP and allow a small lot of 11,500 or less on AG1 land, it does impact all of us forever. It's a forever change. Why does the most recent plan not show stormwater facilities? I'm confused by that. This is another example of why this plan was incomplete. The stormwater management facilities will require land and space. What's contemplated? How is that impact going to compare or impact the actual yield plans? Where will the stormwater facilities actually be placed? Let's talk about this question of green space versus open space. Earlier applications referred to green space. That word has now been removed, and we only see reference to open space. We also see that the March 17th application removed the word community septic drain fields because they didn't want that to be so evident. The open space is effectively the community septic drain field. That's hardly green space. If we went back to the CSO that was proposed and ultimately denied unanimously on December 7th, the whole intention of the CSO, even at that time, was that green space would be buildable land, not open space that's actually just a drain field. So the removal of the word green space and the replacement with open space is very telling. This is not about protecting buildable green space. This is about higher density housing under the guise of green space, which is now called open space, which miraculously allows for the community septic fields to be within it. Under the CSO, green space would not have allowed the septic fields to be constituted as 100% of the green space or close to 100%. The community unit plan is not the appropriate vehicle to allow for higher density housing on AG1 zone land. We heard Mr. Recook talk about CUPs within Milton. Those CUPs have 1 acre minimums. They don't have a quarter acre lot. They don't have 11,250 square feet per home. White Columns has 1 acre minimums, period. Triple Crown, right, has 1 acre minimums. They're beautiful. People keep wanting to make the AG1 land the devil. It's not the devil. Go drive in some of our most beautiful communities that are 1 or more. They're beautiful. People have come here because we have beautiful, beautiful development. There's no basis for a CUP to be used to increase density of AG1 zone land. By staff's own admission, the applicant's request has lots that are small in size and would not meet the maximum 20% requirement, which is typically attainable when acre lots are developed. That was page 11 of 27 of the original analysis. The point being is the fact that this applicant needs to request from a 20% to a 50% variance is very indicative that it's too much on too small of a lot. That variance should be denied. The zoning process is to evaluate the petitioner's application, not any other future imagined plan by any other entity. And the plan submitted by this applicant is not in keeping with the City of Milton's comprehensive land use plan. It's in direct conflict with the comprehensive land use plan in the agricultural and estate areas of Milton. If anyone later wants to create a new and different vehicle to allow for higher density housing on AG1 land, that it should be done through a well-advertised, community-known, well-vetted zoning process. In other words, a separate amendment to our overall land use policies. This should not be an end around. Allowing smaller lot sizes to the tune of less than a quarter of an acre on a bona fide AG1 zone land would be a travesty and should not be allowed. This rezoning, it's been mentioned and it's worth repeating, has lots as small as 12,000 square feet. Community septic systems, they are an issue. They've not been fully vetted, and we don't have enough information regarding what system would be literally utilized for this particular property. A brief discussion at a work session with less than 3 days' notice to the public is not a full vetting of community septic systems. Ken Gerard, the city attorney, did state that Forsyth County has in fact now prohibited community septic systems in large part because they have failed. The list of questions regarding community septic is long and the risks have not been identified. The petitioner does not own this land and is under contract, and it's predicated on this petitioner getting the land rezoned. You have neighbors, however, that do own the land, that live there, that are extremely concerned, that have voiced their concerns to you in letters, some of whom have come to the microphone, others of whom who have had discussions with individuals through phone calls. There are way too many unknowns with this plan, including how much specific land is comprised of the lake, which is unbuildable land, how much is wetlands, which specimen trees exist, which would remain. Where would the stormwater facilities be placed? What would the actual elevations of the homes look like? Not pictures of other developments, but this specifically. This is an end around for the conservation subdivision ordinance, which was denied outright 7-0. Bottom line, the comprehensive land use plan was never contemplated to allow for small lots on AG1 land. On that premise, it should be denied outright, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have two more speakers. The next one is Kim Horn.
Good evening. My name is Kim Horn. I live at 415 Wakeland Court in Milton. I could echo all the comments of those in opposition that have come before me, and I would like to do that. One of the things that concerns me the most is using, as others have said, using the CUP as a tool to bring in unwanted high-density housing and community septic to Milton. The CUPs are typically used just to change the placement of a house on a lot, not to change the entire lot size. Approving this would allow for negative precedent going forward, and the city already knows that community septic would place a tremendous financial burden on the city, one of which they do not want to accept. So therefore, I ask tonight that you deny the case before you for Ebenezer Road. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next and last speaker is Bill Hosmer.
Bill Hosmer. I live at 235 Weatherwood Circle in Milton. 99% of what I was going to say has already been spoken, so I won't take a lot of time. But I do appreciate you guys staying strong and listening to the voices of the citizens of Milton and rejecting the CSO over and over again. I do believe this is just an end around the CSO, another way they achieve the goal of taking a lot of land that's not very useful, putting the land that is useful and cramming the homes on it just to maximize profit. If the numbers are $6 million profit, I understand why the builder wants to do it. I understand why adjacent homeowners want to do it. I wouldn't mind having $750 to $1 million homes built next to me as well. There's certainly a value in that. So I just appreciate the time that you guys put over this in a year or so. Just the fact that you stood with the citizens. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. How much? Hold on one second. How much time do we have left?
Let's see, we have 28 minutes, so.
How much time is left for the opposition? I have someone a speaker that wants to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we have plenty of time.
You can
We have
come out.
like 4 minutes.
Just go ahead and state your name again for the record.
Sure. Monica Chambers at 715 Ebenezer Road. I just wanted to say, because I forgot to say it earlier, and I apologize, but Matt Capps, who lives across the street from me at 690 Ebenezer, is also against this. He can't be here because he's on the Arizona Diamondbacks baseball team and is in Arizona with his family. Also, Bill Werkheiser, who is across the street and owns 2 properties next to me, is also against it and could also not be here because of work. So I just wanted you to know that 4 of the adjoining properties are against it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, how much time does Mr. Bostic have? I think it said
there's
3.
no more.
Did you say 3 minutes left?
Let's see.
It
There
was
28, so.
did it? I thought you said when he was done there was 3 minutes left for closing for him. Wasn't that?
No, I mean, we just gave him a total of 28 minutes, and that was the end.
Okay, okay.
So the proponents don't have any minutes left.
There's no left. Okay.
Yeah, and then there's.
I'll give him 3 minutes for closing if
Okay.
that's okay.
And then I'll add 3 more.
Hold on, what?
I'm just going to ask that if there's going to be additional time, the opposition would ask that time be allowed for rebuttal.
Yeah, well,
we'll add it.
Yeah. We'll add 3 minutes for Charlie, 3 minutes for rebuttal, but there won't be any more time extended after that. Okay. Yep.
So it'll be a total of 31 minutes. And so, okay.
Just okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Let's make sure it's a hard stop, too, please.
Yeah. I know. I'm going to do the 3 minutes over here, and then.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'll be brief because I've said most of what I needed to say, but I did want to react to a couple of things I heard. Did want to point out there's not an economic advantage to this. There is several $100,000 in additional cost of a community septic system versus individual. That's the amount of money that we would also save by not crossing the creek. So there's not an economic advantage. The land cost is the same. We have to sell expensive homes on here to make this work. Others would not. Pulte or Lennar, you know it, you've seen it. They could come along and they could destroy this land and they could put their lower priced homes on this street. We'll be a better option for sure. Wanted to point out that as far as the individuals taking care of their individual tanks as part of this septic system, the HOA will control that and manage that and make sure that those don't get out of control. Also like to point out on septics, there's no new technology that we're using on this. This is all existing technology that's been around for decades. Nothing new or proprietary that we're using there. On the CSO, just remind you that the reasons it was turned down, one is because it made it mandatory for all landowners, and that would be a taking, and that's not in keeping with the way Milton works, and because of some confusion about the septic, for which we've answered those questions tonight. We do meet all of the CSO requirements, and who said we didn't, but we meet all those requirements. And this is not a CSO. This is actually just a better way to do it. CSO would allow for additional density at 1 per acre. We're at only 0.79 per acre, so we're less than that. And then I point out on the yield plan, it's a real yield plan. Does not take into account the creeks or the lakes or any of that land. We use Sam Asadi, the most well-respected soil scientist in the city of Milton that's done the septic systems for many of your homes. He has done the study and says this is a real plan. This is really buildable. In terms of coverage, we're asking for 5,500 square feet per lot. Under the current zoning, it's 8,000 square feet per lot. So even if it's 50%, you can do some funny math if you want, but the reality is we're asking for 2,500 square foot less per lot than the current zoning allows. And also point out that community septic is a right under the current ordinance. And then I'd point out that we are not using the CUP to protect, to have some kind of end around. We're doing it to protect equestrian view sheds. We're doing it for the reasons that Milton stands for, and we have not increased density in doing so. Thank you very much for your consideration.
It was about 2.5 minutes.
Okay. So the opposition went 2.5 minutes?
In addition, they actually also have.
That's protocol, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Say about 5.
But they have more than 2.5 minutes. They have about 6 or 7
Got it.
minutes.
Okay.
All right.
That's it.
Do 6 minutes.
And that's it.
6.
Yeah. Let's go, Tim. Strong.
I just had 3 other points to make. One is there are even more residents than Monica mentioned down on Ebenezer Road. There's David Gower.
Do you have like just point of order? Do you have like statements from these people?
David Gower actually spoke.
Okay, just for the record, just
at the last planning commission meeting.
I know, but just for the record and for future references, we need to have written affidavits from them, I believe, so you can speak on their behalf.
So a previous statement at the planning commission wouldn't count?
No, I'm just saying, just for the record, it would help. Just
okay. So
it's in the sign card.
There is additional opposition down there. The other thing I'd like to mention is this isn't necessarily a choice of conservation subdivisions versus AG1 subdivisions. I mean, this land is marginal, okay? There's a reason it hasn't been developed, and there are other tracts in Milton that are marginal also. So, you know, it's a question of do you develop it this way, or maybe it doesn't get developed at all, or maybe it gets developed 5 years from now. So, you know, this is kind of a false choice that's out there, AG1 versus conservation subdivisions. So I'd like to make that point. The other thing is I'm glad they didn't, quote Randall Arendt tonight, okay, because they like to quote him, and they selectively quote him. I didn't hear how much buildable land is going to get conserved, but Randall Arendt says at least 35% of buildable land should be conserved, okay? Also, he said that you need to have sewer. And then lastly, it needs to be jurisdictions where it's 1.5 acres or greater, because when you kind of squeeze it down from 1 acre, it doesn't look good. We all know that, okay? So I just wanted to mention that because he gets quoted a lot. He didn't get quoted tonight, and I'm happy about that. Thank you.
We have about almost 7 minutes left.
The gentleman stated that the HOA would take care of, I use his exact words, would take care of the community septic. I'm the vice president of my homeowners association. I own properties in 6 subdivisions. So I deal with a lot of HOA people on a regular basis, tenant landlord issues and whatnot. In 16 years of owning property, my own and rental properties, I couldn't think of one person, as part of a homeowners association, would be comfortable having to take care of or get involved in a community septic. I don't know what sort of training they would need, or education, or civil engineering class. I'm not sure what that would take, but I don't know if the average layperson who's serving as a volunteer of their subdivision feel comfortable to just step up and take care of a community septic system. So,
Thank you. Robin?
We have almost 6 minutes.
I promise I'm not using 6
Okay.
minutes. Just as a matter of rebuttal, I just wanted to get back to the very most critical points, and that is that staff recommended denial after thorough analysis. This petition is in direct conflict with the comprehensive land use plan. This rezoning is inconsistent with the adjacent and nearby properties that are single-family residences on large lots. The distance of the proposed lots are in many instances less than 50 feet from adjacent properties, which is in direct conflict with the AG1 development standards. This zoning is in direct conflict with the City of Milton's policy of protecting the rural viewshed. The subject site has a reasonable economic use as currently zoned. The yield plan, I don't care if we talk gross density all day long, quarter-acre lots on AG1 land has never been allowed under City of Milton or even under as unincorporated Fulton County. We shouldn't allow small lots on AG1 land when our comprehensive land use plan says that it shouldn't be so. That land use policy is what we should be looking to. It's what citizens expected when we became a city. It's what citizens continue to expect as you and as the mayor and council and staff continues to evaluate things as they come forward. And yes, everybody has due process. And fortunately, our city to date has done a good job of upholding our land use policies, and we need to continue to do so. I will just close by saying thank you for your service, and I ask that you continue to uphold our land use policies and the AG1 land that many, 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 many thousands of citizens have always expected. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. That will close public comment. And open it up for questions for staff or the applicant. I want to talk about the yield plan really quick, since I know that's one of my big issues. So if we go to this AG1 yield plan, my question that I have for staff is, there's two, as it currently is today, there's two separate parcels, correct? These are two separate parcels. Okay. And so, sure, yeah, that'd be good. Thank you. So there's two separate parcels. So the top parcel is that only accessible from Sweet Apple Road, correct? Is that correct?
Correct, the
Okay.
eastern portion.
And that's a gravel road, correct?
Correct.
And so as is today, they can build 3-acre minimums on that piece of land, correct?
With access from the ground.
So we're saying,
Yeah.
so that's
Well, that's the only way you can access that.
only way you
right?
can access it.
As if they're separate, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go both here. So that's, how many acres is that, 17? Is that what you said earlier?
I think we approximated that.
Okay, so you got 5 3-acre lots on the top one. On the other parcel, the main parcel, how many is able to fit there? Because I guess I'm counting 36. I don't know if that's correct or not. On the big parcel, I was a little off.
If we minus out what the yield plan was on the eastern portion.
Correct.
Yeah, it's about 34.
And I think I was counting 30. Yeah, I guess my question is,
35.
okay, so that's but that's not in, there's two parcels that are like
Overlapping the property line.
that are,
Straddle it, there's two lots that
yeah.
straddle the line.
So let's say 34. So my question is, if we combine the parcels and we do a yield plan, this is what I would consider a correct yield plan for that if they cross the creek. Correct. So if they cross the creek, they can have 50. But if they don't cross the creek, in my opinion, a density neutral yield plan would be, 30, let's say 36 plus 5, you're looking at 41 lots. Am I going in the right direction, or am I just off?
I guess it could be analyzed that way, yes, if you had two separate parcels that weren't connected.
So if you combine the parcels, you cross the creek, you can get your 50 lots.
Well, especially if it's only accessible from the gravel road, which is 3-acre minimum.
Yeah, but you would have to cross the creek in order to get that density, the AG1 density from Ebenezer.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so, okay, that's fair enough. Okay, I'll open it up for questions.
Good. I have one, Kathy, and I couldn't find it when I went back through your presentation, but you said they were not in agreement on environmental study. Somewhere, and I know you said they weren't in agreement on the architectural.
Oh, I think it was the individual lot review with the city arborists.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That they
The
were.
architecture.
Yeah, our intent on that was to get a construction site per lot that would be environmentally sensitive and would minimize the cutting of any trees the unnecessary cutting of any trees. And then we would want the arborist to look at each development site.
That's
per
fine.
lot.
Okay.
And they're opposed to.
And they were.
That is correct. And that, and also the architectural reviews are also opposed.
Right. Can we, or has there been other situations where we had architectural approving the architectural through design review board, or?
Yeah, when we approve zoning or a zoning modification, our standard practice is to include that. For instance, on Monday night, in the zoning modification for Birmingham and Birmingham.
Yes.
There is architectural review in that one.
And also, I think the NUP next to you, the Beezer Homes on southern part of Hopewell, that was a NUP.
Right.
And so that was a rezoning very similar to this. Obviously, they have sewer, and that was a requirement that they have architectural review. And it's not so much that the architect, says you have to do it my way, but it's a matter of just reviewing it and looking at it 360. And I think especially with the lots along the view shed, along Ebenezer, we want to make sure that they're sensitive. So it's not that we're taking over the architecture, we're just kind of backfilling.
No, I'm in agreement. I want to make sure that we had done it before.
So have we ever,
Is there
do you
any-
have any examples where we have forfeited that requirement?
I mean, I'm not saying that in the recent past that we've required it, but I mean, it's.
That's my question. In the recent past, since we've required it, have we ever given up the requirement? I don't recall any.
I mean, it's been a few years that we haven't done it, so it was prior to us having the full-time architect, so.
But now we have that for a reason.
Yeah, and now that we have a full-time architect, I can't recall it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have we ever had a situation where we've given up the city requirement to do the site review by the arborist?
Well, I think the arborist does review every single site plan, but this was a little bit more extra in that we wanted to make sure that he reviewed everyone for the grading as well as for the trees. But he does look, and there's tree save areas on typical land plans for houses. So he already does it to an extent, but this was a little bit more thorough.
We thought here it was very sensitive, had a lot of topo issues, a lot of specimen trees. So, and we've discussed this before, I think, in our previous discussions, how that we really wanted to be very sensitive and control the construction site within the lot. Right. And that's what this attempt was to do.
Yeah, we have an unusual piece of property here that has a variety of challenges, not least of which is topography.
Correct.
We also have a parcel of land here where we've got, in one breath, we've got an applicant talking about their desire to preserve and protect the view sheds, and in the next minute, they're denying the city's request to have the arborist come in and take stock of what's there and what we're going to protect. And they talk about the fact that we're not going to rape the land, we're not going to clear cut, and then the next minute, the potential to do that would be there without the arborist having a chance to weigh in. I don't find that argument to be consistent by the applicant. Sorry, Fred, I didn't mean to.
No, that was the two that I had for staff.
Any questions?
Not for staff.
I have a couple. In the applicant's revision of the recommended conditions, they've struck in 4 the sidewalk. And that, I guess I learned tonight from someone's statement that it's actually, the road is actually itself controlled by the city of Roswell. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So do we have the ability to control whether there is gravel or sidewalk or curb and gutter?
I believe not. I think that's something that we would have to negotiate, and we can submit a request through the city of Roswell. It would be their determination of.
So by striking it, as they've suggested, what does that mean to us? And is it, because it would then be silent to it, it's not in there as a requirement? Would staff recommend that go back in and be a point of negotiation with Roswell because it's actually in the document, or are you comfortable with it being struck?
Perhaps Carter Lucas, who I believe is in the audience, could respond to that first.
You still get drawn into it.
I know. Trying to
He
stay
thought
with
he was.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Here, let me give you our version.
For a double I.
Yeah, they're asking them to be omitted. Yeah.
Do you want me to read this? Do you want to ask another question while I read this? Or?
Sure, we can do that. Another question for staff. Can you cite any examples in the AEE designation that we've used for the city, which is agriculture, equestrian, estate, which is to imply the larger, that's part of a character area that we've described for the city. Can you cite any examples for me where we've approved quarter-acre lots?
I believe there's, not for a CUP and not for where it's unsewered. There was another development that's an extension of Milton Place on Hopewell Road, so it was surrounded
But it
by
was sewer.
But there was sewer available, but that was technically, I believe, the AEE, so.
Okay. But it was sewered. Okay. I'm sorry, I'll get some other
Does anybody,
stuff, but go ahead.
anybody have any questions, staff, or the applicant?
Oh, yeah. Plenty for the applicant.
What, Fran?
I have them for the
Okay,
applicant.
you can go and ask. Mr.
No
Ross?
one mentioned the height restriction.
So that would, let me address that. That would actually be covered, even though it wasn't mentioned in the conditions, but this area is dictated by the rural Milton overlay, and the height restriction for single-family homes are 28 feet from average grade to the roofie, and so that is what he would be, that's what the houses would be, need to be.
Okay.
Yes.
The stormwater plan was one which I had highlighted earlier to ask if we've looked at many apps, and everyone has a plan on the stormwater, and this is void of any even discussion.
You're saying that they do have a location of stormwater, yes.
Right.
Yeah, we always see some form of a stormwater, and you would have to ask the applicant what the intention of is the stormwater, because we don't.
Okay, I'm asking what the plan.
Just do staff first, Frank.
Oh, I thought,
At the
okay.
time, if you want to.
We move on.
Because we're doing staff first.
Okay,
Hold that question.
I'll hold that.
You ready, Carter?
Ready.
You got it? Okay.
So if the discussion was the elimination of 4A2 there, I don't know that there are other facilities along Ebenezer Road that it would tie into. So the requirement, whether or not Roswell would require that or not, would be fine with us.
Well, there is one today. I can't remember the name of the subdivision, but the.
Further down towards Hayden Hall?
Yes, it's actually Hayden Hall, I think, that you reminded me of the name. I think that one actually has completed their gutter, or their curb, I'm sorry.
Hayden Hall is in Roswell, but there is, Chatham is developing the parcel to the west, so I
Yeah.
think that's what you see being developed currently.
Right, that's, on both sides of it.
It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
What's,
I have pictures if you guys want to see them.
what's gorgeous?
He's being
The
sarcastic.
curb and gutter and sidewalk.
Oh, I hope you're being sarcastic.
I am.
Yeah,
Gorgeous.
thank you. Yeah. I could not find it more offensive.
I mean, I think it would be in keeping with kind of the feel of what the CUP is supposed to do to eliminate that condition, but realistically, that responsibility would lie with Roswell as to whether or not they would require it.
Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Any more questions for staff?
I just have one more, and it has to do with the fact that the applicant did not cooperate with the listing of or answering the questions in the ESAs required by section 64-2126. Can you guys comment on that, the importance of that and the fact that we don't have it?
Well, I mean, it's one of the items that are listed in the zoning ordinance for an application, and, I mean, it wasn't straight out answered through, we have a series of questions, and both about land use and about the actual environmental study, so it just was not met. So, I mean, not to say it couldn't have been met, but it was.
Right, but it hasn't been.
Right.
One of the things that we asked for consideration, and we're preparing to make a decision for recommendation. It'd be nice to have
That's
the
right.
application complete.
So you're saying the application was incomplete then?
Yes, at this point in time.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah. That's all I have for staff.
Any more questions for staff? All right, open it up for the applicant. Questions for the applicant? I know, Fred, you have some?
Sure, we'll go back to answering the question as it relates to the stormwater system, how it would be handled.
As I understand from my engineers, we'll be able to handle this with several small earthen ponds, and then the lake will pick up some of it as well, but not the water quality, of course, which we don't want to impact the lake. I would point out that we have much less impervious because of the design with reduced coverage on the lots from 8,000 to 5,500, and with a little less street in there, a little less impact from ponds than there will be with the AG1. The AG1 plan does have some areas located on there that leave room for that, so that is a true AG1 plan. And if I could also point out that we are okay with review by architecture and arborists. The language was just a little strict in there. We're okay with review. Thank you.
So I'd like to just get more clarification, I'm sorry, on several earthen ponds. Where are those contemplated on the site map?
They're not located on there yet because we've gone through so many different revisions here that in this last one was in response to some recent comments. We've created this newer plan because of it, but so it's not fully engineered, but there are some locations, I don't know how well to describe it, but just south of the lake itself, there's an area that's located on a previous plan that's still available now. And then there's a spot close to the middle of the property on the very northern side where there's natural drainage in that area as well. So the areas that had been engineered before are still available here. We just haven't gone through the full engineering on here, but there's clearly room for them for an earlier plan. I'd also want to point out on the ESA that was incomplete. We responded very specifically to the questions on here, and if there's some specific additional ones that aren't 100% complete, as staff points out, we'd be happy to try to answer those tonight. But we've definitely responded to the questions here, and I think we just have some areas that are missing, and I'm happy to answer if there's something additional information needed.
Well, I don't have the benefit of that because I don't think staff had it for us in the deck, did you?
If they were answered in various spots instead of being answered in the form that was provided in the application, so that was.
If I could clear, Robin, do you have our ESA that we submitted?
I mean, I don't.
Maybe that was just something that there's some clerical issue with on our part, and I apologize if there is.
Water retention.
This is showing us received January 7th. That helps anyone?
Y'all have any more questions for the applicant?
Yeah.
All right.
So I think you do have a lot of engineering issues. I mean, you have a lot of stuff from geotechnical and engineering, but the problem is that it wasn't very obvious how those questions were being, I mean, I know there's a stream, I know there's a lake, but it just needed to be answered succinctly for the form.
So we'll work on doing that better between now and.
And I'm sure you can do that.
Okay. I think the information's in there, but we'll try to articulate it better.
So I have a question for Mr. Hendricks. Pete, in your presentation to us this evening in the opening, at one point you referenced the area that's not intended to be developed. And in your comment, I don't have it verbatim, but you said this area is not suitable for development. And I'd like you to expand on that, if you would, please.
I think Charlie must have made that comment.
No, it was you. It was actually, I wrote it down when you were speaking.
The comment that I was making was the reference that the staff was making to their planned policy. And I was of the position that the plan that's put in front of you speaks exactly to the sensitivity of what should be addressed in putting together a development site plan.
Okay, but the quote that I'm recalling was you said that this area is not suitable for development.
I don't, which area?
The area that's not planned for development.
Well, the area to the east of the creek in our evaluation, because of the severity of the topo where that creek sits and the integrity of the road that it would take to do the crossing, and we think that that is more destructive to the overall sensitive development of that property than to come in and, as was pointed out earlier, with the creek crossing, be able to spread those lots out over both parcels. That to us just does not make sense. Is it undevelopable? No, I don't think it is undevelopable. I don't think that the inclusion of that as part of a development plan is most sensitive to the overall development of the tract.
But developable, could mean heavy grading.
Well, it
dealing,
will.
Dealing with steep slope.
Yeah.
That today would be probably considered undevelopable land by Milton's standards. So it's not inconsistent to say that is undevelopable land.
Well, I did not do the engineering profile on it. They had that done by, the crowd that did that profile, and they came forward with a development plan that they said was capable of development under the AG1 district.
Okay.
Now, whether it makes sense to do it, that's where we are disjointed.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for, and I'm sorry, the developer, I'm forgetting your name?
Charlie.
Charlie, sorry, thanks, Charlie. In the depiction of the homes that you showed us that are examples of what Brightwater builds, which I think is a quality product, are all of those that you depicted for us this evening buildable on the lots that you're proposing are going to be in this development?
So there were a variety of homes shown, and all of them will fit on at least some of these lots. And so some of those were designed for our wider lots, and some of those were designed for the narrower lots. But they're all they're all projects that can fit in this property. By the way, not all of those were ours by any means. Some of those were Hayden Hall, just to say that we want to be respectful and in keeping with the architecture there. And then if I could say about that creek crossing, our engineer has actually worked it out where we can cross it. His estimation of developing that crossing is about $300,000. We're going to spend that same $300,000, maybe even $400,000 on the community septic system. So economically, it's completely viable to cross that creek. It's been largely engineered to do that anyway. And like I said, a Pultier Lennar would happily cross that creek just like it is, and it works. It's not something that can't be done.
And if you spent that $300,000 to cross that creek, that would eliminate the need for the community septic system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
No.
Well, he just said it was correct.
Well,
I don't need you guys answering on his behalf.
If you do it with AG1, yes, it would eliminate if you stick to the 1 acre AG1 lots.
Right, that's the question I'm asking. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have a community septic if you developed 1 acre lots by crossing the creek.
We could do the AG1 plan as designed. It's designed and ready to go, just not for us, maybe for another developer
So we'd have undeveloped.
It's absolutely not
land.
undevelopable. Any other developer would do it. We just don't want to destroy the sensitive ecological area there. That's it. Any other developer can and will do it. It's absolutely developed. In fact, it's some of the better land to develop over on that side.
With the size of the septic systems that are going to be required, where are you proposing that the septic field go?
So the current plan is in that area that's across on that area that's on the other side of the lake. So that's the current location that's planned, and it's all been tested for as well. There's about 17 acres over there. We only need 5 or 6 acres for it, so it can stay far away from any property lines and other neighbors. And
Is
we
that
can also
why-
do it without removing any trees.
Is that why there's been a change in some of the language from undisturbed land to, and rather than green space to open space?
Absolutely not. In fact, I didn't even realize there was a change, so I don't know if that was a staff change or what. We actually plan to put that land in a land trust to protect it even more than the city would and more than the HOA would. And we're going to do this without clearing any of those trees. We're going to go with the special system. It's not special, but it's the drip system as opposed to the other kind that requires you to remove trees. It's a standard system that some of you may have in your home, but we're able to do it without clearing any of those trees. We won't clear the trees, and we'll put it in a land trust permanently so that land is protected even more than the city requires it to. And that's something we're doing because we believe in it. We would hate to do all this work, put all this effort, and come back 10 years later to find out that the HOA put a soccer field in where we try to preserve trees. So it's something we believe in.
Yeah, which is a key point. And if it's not preserved and it's referred to just as open space, it could become a soccer field.
Well, I'd love it if you put language in the zoning that requires us to do this without clearing the trees over there.
Actually, we do have some language that does go there.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're absolutely in support of that. That's the intent.
So in your preparation, you, to a certain extent, had to become at least a casual expert on the community septic system that you're planning on implementing here?
I don't know that I would call myself an expert, but we've done some study on it.
Okay, and so would you liken it, is it the drip field concept, is that similar to the one that's used up at the Birmingham Crossroads for the Publix?
I don't think so. I don't know much about that one, but
It's a drip system, right?
I don't know that it's a drip system. What I do know is it has a treatment facility with it.
Right.
And the treatment facility is what causes the odors that people smell. And we had proposed that earlier, but we're saying, look, we realize there's opposition to that. We don't want to create odors for our neighbors or for our customers and homeowners either. So we're saying, let's forget that system. Let's do the same thing that's in many of the backyards of people in here and in the city. So we're sticking to a traditional system that doesn't have the smell issue.
Okay, well, I'm not sure that, as you just qualified yourself as not an expert any more than I am, I'm not so sure that I'm satisfied with that answer. And the fact that a drip system is a drip system, that's where the fluid does come out and is available to the surface. And I would propose that that's what causes the smell, which I find horrific at Publix. So if there's anything like that, I got to tell you, the community would be really offended to that pretty darn quickly.
So the engineers that we've talked to, including the one that works for the city on this subject matter, have told us that the smell comes from the treatment portion of it, which we are not planning to do.
I will say that that system does have a drip component to it, but it also has a biological treatment. And it, when it sits in the storage tank, becomes a little bit septic. And when the pumps kick on, that
Not a
does
little
create
bit
the odor.
septic, a lot septic.
Yeah, that does create the odor when the pumps kick on. The drip system is in 5 acres to the east of the public system, and it just runs on a surface through the woods over in that area.
Okay. I don't think any of us are experts tonight.
For sure.
I would tell you, I'm really concerned about that.
I'm telling you what the engineers, including the city's engineer, has told us. And we're not going to do that.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I don't.
Okay.
I've got a couple questions, but they're not really for the applicant, they're more for staff.
Okay. Go ahead.
We've talked about some of the additional criteria, special criteria that the applicant would have to do because he's asking for a zoning change here or modification, however we're terming that. Let's say that somebody does do AG1 there. Are they going to have to do special tree inspections when they grade their land and put in their houses there?
No, not by right. But as I stated, I mean, we already look at, as far as...
I know we do.
He does look at each plan and determines the tree save area. So there's already some of that already built in, but no, we won't have any conditions to be able to go onto it.
Right, it's just what's on the books currently, that's what we'll utilize. Because this is a rezoning, we can attach special additional conditions.
Right. And if we have, I assume that the same's going to hold true if someone comes in there, just like that's being installed in the developments prior to this on Ebenezer. There's no overly restrictive architectural designs on those homes that are being built along the road there?
So we only dictate those homes, or we have review of the homes that are adjacent or in the view shed. So we look at as 360 architecture and make sure there's nothing extremely crazy about it, but we don't tell them exactly how it needs to be built. But we do have review on the exterior homes that are adjacent to it.
And we make some comments, and hopefully they're good citizens for us.
They
and
are. I mean,
and
overall,
most of them are.
They've been
I believe that.
very receptive, and we also look at Bob, the city architect, looks at every single house for the height. So
for sure.
sometimes we run into problems in certain subdivisions, and 99% of the time, the developers and builders go back very happy with the solutions, and they don't really have to do much, just be creative. So.
And fitting in with the context of what we're already developing out there, so I'm fine with that. And I saw something in there about the traffic where it doesn't look like it's going to be a major increase or impact to the traffic flow pattern out there. I think I saw something like that. So
right. I mean, there's not a lot of traffic going there. I mean, obviously it'll produce additional trips based on the 50 lots, but
no more than would be if it was 50
lots
in little
of
ones or
each
50 in bigger ones. It's 50 households
right, exactly.
in that particular case. Those are just a couple that I had.
I guess what I have to say really is this issue continues to come before this commission. It's come in various forms, and we've listened to arguments on both sides of the issue, and I must say I believe both sides want the same thing. The problem is you can't get together and come up with a common solution. And I wish that you all would sit down, and I hope that all the concerned citizens would come together and come up with a compromise that is acceptable to both sides. Contrary to what you hear in the political speeches today, compromise is not a dirty word. If we don't do something, we're going to have 1 acre lots all over Milton. It will be developed. There's no way to stop it. People are going to continue to sell their land to developers, and people are going to continue to move here simply because it's a great place to live. But we've got to do something to conserve some of this green space and maintain the rural viewshed. I mean, I think we can use conservation subdivisions in the right places in the right ways, and if it's done properly, and that's a big if. But if you will get together and come up with a common solution, I think we can do this. That's all I have to say right now.
Any questions for staff? I think I want to go back to the yield plan because it's always been my fundamental issue with this is that we need to know, in my opinion, Mr. Bostic's plan is not density neutral. If he crosses the creek, he can get the extra lot. So, in my opinion, you get the large portion of land and you can build 36 homes on this yield plan, which it's more like 34 because I'm counting these 2 lots. So you get 36 lots. And then if you want to add the 5 lots, so in my opinion, it's really 41 lots is what he could build without crossing the creek, not 50. You cross the creek, you can get your extra lots. Now, in the real world, could a developer come in and buy both parcels and do 50 AG1 lots? Absolutely.
I'm not even sure that's possible.
Now, I know.
Based off their own expert reports.
I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt.
I mean,
so what I'm saying is I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. And even then, if I'm a developer, I don't want that piece of land up there Why would I want to build a bridge?
So you
I
can
could just
use
build
it. So you can use it to get more
Yeah,
lots,
that's-
or as a drain field.
Or you just buy the bigger piece of land and just build your 34, maybe, AG1 lots.
And move on to your next parcel.
Move on to your next parcel. You have these as 5 3-acre estate lots. So, in my opinion, if this plan was 41 lots, I could go there maybe without, it was just talking about yield, and because I think that's in my opinion, one of the major concerns of the community is people on the road, they're concerned about overcrowding and everything, and so I think if we can get past the density neutral, if we can make that work, then we can go on to all the other issues, and that's why I have an issue with this.
I think it's a very valid one. I know one of the things that came out of the mayor and council work session was the fact that our current code allows for community septic, and the community septic isn't necessarily a decision factor this evening as a part of the vote that we're being asked to cast, because our code does allow it. I would simply make this comment with regard to that. I promise you, when we adopted those codes, many of us, or a couple of us who are still at the table tonight, were part of the adopting of those codes that the mayor and council finally adopted and codified, and that was, I promise you, we did not contemplate community septic systems when we adopted that code. That was a Fulton County language that we adopted at the time, and it certainly did not contemplate conservation subdivisions, nor did it contemplate community septic, and it's true as it's being presented to us today. I would also remind everybody, as we're casting our vote this evening, that one of the reasons that we created the city of Milton was to get away from some of the Fulton County regulations that brought our governance close to home. There was a reason that we thought we were unique and special and different. We wanted to make sure that we had control over that. And I would propose that casting a vote tonight, regardless of what your decision factors are, is actually to a certain extent casting our destiny back into the hands of Fulton County or the state, because those are the folks who are going to be required to regulate the community septic system that's being proposed to us this evening. So that is not a consideration for the vote in its exact consideration, because we're not being asked to contemplate community septic tonight, but I would just remind you of some of those parameters that we were asked to, or the reason that we're here tonight as the city of Milton having a chance to cast a vote is because we decided that we did not want to have Fulton County as our regulator telling us what we could or couldn't do. I would also just say that, in one breath, we talk about the preservation of our equestrian community and all the things that are appropriate to go along with that. And the next minute, we're talking about a sea of shingles, a sea of rooftops, and we're talking about a concentrated effort to put homes in this kind of configuration. The land that's being preserved is not really within the viewshed of the greater community. Ebenezer Road, pasture land that's there right now would have 7 homes backing up to it, and yes, we're talking about a little bit more setback, but it's still going to be homes that are compressed together in a higher density than they would have if they were 1-acre lots. And this is, in my mind, not in my wildest dreams what I ever thought would be before us in the kind of land that is really spectacular over off of Ebenezer Road. I would hope there'd be a kind of example of area that we would like to preserve, like the area off of, is it Sweet Apple, would be, in the fact that it's off of a gravel road and be 3-acre estate lots. If you drive Ebenezer Road, what you'll see on one side, although I think it's in Roswell, is Seven Hills Farms. They probably have $1 million in the equestrian structure that's on that property alone. Many of the homes that are over there are probably well in excess of $1 million that are on that side of the street as well. And we're talking about putting quarter acre lots immediately adjacent to these estate homes and estate lots that are over there. I just find it completely inconsistent with what we've ever contemplated as a city.
Any other discussion?
I mean, just to go along with that, I mean, we've got standards of review, like you were asking, to rezone a property from one zoning to another, from AG1 to CUP, and I just don't see where those standards have been met.
Yeah, there's no hardship. It's just a.
Well, there's several of, issues, so.
I'd like to make a motion. If you're prepared for that.
Are we,
No, I mean, the floor is open for a motion, and we can always have discussion after a second. So, do you have anything to say? You can say.
I mean,
Go for it.
I think there's a lot that has not been said about all of this. I was not aware that that's where we were with this. I know that's where we went to the discussion, but are we closed with staff and the applicant, and we're debating the issue and we're talking about it?
Correct.
Is that what we're doing?
Yep.
now? Okay, I guess I'll start at the top where.
Well,
go ahead.
If I can call for a motion, I'm entitled to make the motion.
Absolutely. Anyone can make a motion at any time, but we'll always have discussion anyway.
Absolutely.
Before we vote. So Noel can say what he wants to say now, or he can say it after.
You're welcome to make the motion. I'm fine.
That's right. I'll wait.
Go ahead, go.
All right, but I would just say, first off, I would say that I believe that we're here not because we were talking about the CSO and not because we were talking about the septic fields, anything like that. The reason why we're here is because at some point in time, people were dissatisfied with what they were seeing out there. When we were all AG1s, and the developments were and still are going in as AG1s. And that's when proposals came up and signs went up about Preserve Rural Milton and different things that have been ongoing all along. People see development, and it is scary. It is red mud. It is trees are going down. Things are changing. And so constantly people pop up with a new idea or a new movement to say, what can we do? What can be done to do better than we're doing now? Which is not to say that we don't have it good. And I've heard it said in the community, we speak a little high and mighty about how good we are and stuff. And that point well taken. We don't need to look down on our citizens that aren't in AG1 or don't have the high and mighty house that's on the golf course. We're all part of the town. And we're supposed to be looking at this now. We're supposed to be looking at this now, not about this. I know we have to study this one development, but the issue and the reason why we're here is the town, is looking for some solution to improve how good it is. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in doing that, what I want to say that I don't feel like we get the straight scoop from some of our citizens when they're presenting their stories. And I think that we have a long history of being very credible, being very straightforward, honest, and fair, and listening to the data and getting into the issues and studying them carefully before we make a decision. And I think we deserve better than hearing the rhetoric and the half-truths and some of the disinformation that is presented to us on a regular basis. You guys know who you are. And in a very unexpected but very appreciated bit of wisdom and courage, Karen Thurman stood up here last week and gave it back to the community after their comments. And you're supposed to be helping in the process and aiding in the process, and we're supposed to be listening. But we deserve the straight skinny. And we don't need to hear many of the things that we've heard about, if we want to talk about lot coverage, let's talk about lot coverage and how much we're going to cover the land, how much land we're going to disturb. But we don't need to talk about increasing density when we're really not talking about increasing density. Maybe we are. But let's be specific about what we're talking about instead of being alarmist, so that we can all make a good decision based on the real evidence of the case. And so I think that Karen deserves a lot of credit for having the courage to say what she said. If you haven't seen it on video, you should go watch it. And Gary-El and you others, I appreciate the way that you guys do it, because we are looking for a solution to try to do it better for the town, not to help this developer make a financial increase. I don't think he's trying to. I could be wrong, but I don't think most of our developers, we got some good people who build stuff here. Most of you guys have bought one of their houses. So I just don't like that part of our process where we have to not be truthful in what we're saying when we're presenting the evidence. And I think we can make the decisions better if we have better evidence. That particular issue. Couple points, then I'll move on. We turned down the CSO. We're not talking about the CSO. I know we keep bringing that up as an inflammatory issue. I heard it all last week. But we're not talking about the CSO. We're talking about a development. And before we have not voted on anything, but just so that we understand the issues here. We're talking about a development that is attempting to conserve some space. It's a hybrid of some of the things that we're doing. And I don't know how it's actually worded, but to me this is a special conditional use approval application that we're kind of going for here. I don't know if it's technically a rezoning, okay, but this doesn't mean that tomorrow there could be 3 more of them on Hopewell. Each one of them should be, and I hope would be, considered on their own merits. Why is it good? Why is it useful there? What makes this special? What makes this good? And then we decide on that based on that. To me, this would never set a precedent to say, well, we did the last 4, so we're going to do this one. I couldn't do it. So am I wrong in saying that we are not setting that legal precedent to where the very next guy brings one in, he gets approved based on what we did tonight? Are we doing that? Okay.
And I'm Larry Ramsey, for the ones of you that haven't met before. I worked with Ken Gerard. And I would say, no, you're always going to hear folks argue that any given decision is precedent set, right? And so you'll hear that from both sides. But when it comes to a rezoning, such as this, those are decisions for the city council on a case-by-case basis and for the planning commission as well.
It's conditionally measured and vetted?
Well, that's right. They'll go through staff. You review the same criteria that you do with all rezonings about, is it compatible with surrounding land uses? Does it comply with the comprehensive plan, et cetera? And you as a group and as individuals make your own determinations, as the city council and mayor will, on a case-by-case basis for property. So to your question, if the city council approves any given rezoning, then that does not limit their ability in the future on another application as to whether they have to approve or not. Each property is on its own merits.
Okay, I appreciate that. Back to the CSO, we turned it down for some specific reasons for us. We may have come across many more, but there were just some initial deal breakers that we couldn't deal with, so we couldn't even look at the rest of it for us. Poorly written, or not written in a way to where we could use it for a guide to govern. No determination on whether or not the city was willing to have their policy in managing a septic system. And I understand that now the city is considering that, and there's no determination made, but that's being considered on whether or not and how they would do that. The land use restrictions and property rights issues. We had some issues there on whether or not we could mandate and how these lands would be used and how we would tell people how to do it. Specific to this one and all of these kind of hybrids, it appears that we're going to get in there and we are going to get into determining how these developers manage their business. To me, much like AG1s, I believe that these guys should be able to bring in their hybrid developments if it's a great idea, if they feel it's a good idea, both financially and for themselves and a good value for the community. And, I just don't feel like I have I don't have enough stake in the game to where I can say whether or not, this road should be right here or right there, or whether it should be like if he's got more than the standard setbacks, then why is 20 feet more needed? And I'm not saying this meets all the standards, but I'm saying we should be looking at these things similarly that we would require an AG1. They should have to meet those standards, and okay, maybe a little more, but we shouldn't be able to dictate whether or not he puts them on this side of the river or not on that side of the river. I'm not saying to vote for it. I'm just saying, you can offer. Did you want to put them over there? No, I'm not really ready. Okay. But we shouldn't go, well, I don't like that you didn't put them in pods, and I don't like that you didn't do this. And it's not my money at stake. If he builds a development that he can't sell, then that's on him. Just like it would be in any of your businesses. If you don't produce a good product that's saleable in your market, then you're at risk on that. That's why you're an entrepreneur. That's why you're running that business. So those are some issues that I have with the way that we're going about this. Overall, how I feel about the whole process, this type of thing, not this specific one, but this type of thing. What the applicant has done is he's presenting something that we've generally been looking for. We've been looking for new ideas on how to preserve more of the land and not build it all equally spaced out to where there is a house every 300 feet from the other one. Could you please put this on the visual for me? And I don't know if I can click on them or how we can look at them, but again, I'm not pulling for this particular development or against it. I'm talking about our procedure and our process and making sure that we're doing this in the right way so that we can get to a good answer for our town, for the right decision for the town, not specifically on a particular house or something like that. Am I making sense about that? There's a picture. I just made one called Pictures, and there's about 15 pictures in there. We're all there. You guys have video? Yeah. That's not built. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. If I click on these, will they go? Point to generally there. Okay. How many? Well, I don't need to ask that. How many of you guys have been out there on Ebenezer?
That's the $1 million
okay.
structure I was referring to.
I would venture to say, this is just my own opinion. I would venture to say that 99% of the people in Milton have never been to Ebenezer Road and never will ever go there. It's on the far outreach of where Milton is. And so unless you're going that particular way, you would never go down this street. It's a dead end.
It's a dead end today.
I know. One day it may go through.
Beyond that is not developed.
Again, I said this is my opinion. I understand there were and could still be plans to build a school at the end of that road. So we don't know the answer. But right now, it's a dead-end street. This is the directly across from the development that's ongoing there now. This is one of the properties on there. And when we hear we want to protect our Milton, this is what we're thinking of. And why wouldn't you pull for that? We want to protect our AG1. This is what I'm pulling for. Yeah, I'm on board with that. I'm on your team. Try to do on there. You may have to move them if you could. Will it just jump to the next ones? Or you got to open them? Okay. This is another property on there, an AG1 property. I'm assuming that's one of the ones that, when I'm pulling for that issue, I'm pulling for these. I want to preserve these AG1s. This one might be on a 3, 5, 10 acre land, and the person may even be sitting here in the audience tonight. You go to the next one for me, please. I've got 3 or 4 of them that are on that road. And when we hear this story and when you're making your case, these are the ones you're pulling for. This is, and you can go to the next one, sir. These are those houses, so it's easy to jump on that team. However, we start talking about maintaining our view shed. Okay, this is on that street. You have to pass this development to get to the one we're talking about. Stop right there for me, Carter. If you look down through there, these are those roofs that you talked about, of miles of roof, interconnected roof line that goes on and on.
But do you know the property size of those? I'd be willing to bet those are at least 1 acre.
They could be.
I promise you
they
are.
could be, and I'm not making that argument. All I'm trying to say is we might be pulling for something that we're not necessarily getting, is my case. Is what I'm trying to say.
Today. I thought it was spectacular.
It's beautiful. I'm not pulling. You've heard me say many times up here, I'm not on a team. I want to make sure that what we're pulling for is what we're going to get in the end. And this is the same development, the opposite side of the street that we're passing there. A couple more, yes, sir? What I'm saying is, if we're pulling for AG1, this is the AG1 we're going to get. It's not necessarily bad. It just may not be that rural horse fence, 5 acre lot that we're pulling for.
Do you know what the average price of those homes are in that neighborhood?
No, sir, but I'm sure they're $1 million plus.
They start about $950,000 and go to about $1.3 million.
But the question is this a rural view shed? Is that a rural view shed?
I would propose to you that is more than...
It's better than that.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this.
What is that?
But here is the point.
Was there one there to begin with?
Okay, Paul, here is the point. Please keep going, Carter.
Let's stick to this rezoning, too.
Okay, and the point, but this is the point. The point is, one of the issues that we're arguing about is this view shed. Right now, this is the adjoining property that's being developed now. This is the curb and gutter that's going in for the new development that's happening there now. This is literally an open pasture straight across the street from the horse fence where the big barn was. And within months, this is going to be a house farm here. They're not going to be 100 feet back. They're not going to be...
But no, those are not quarter acre lots right there. Those are no less than 1 acre lots right there. What we're being asked to contemplate is quarter acre lots.
I think what we're being asked to contemplate is, what are we going to see when the houses are built?
And I promise you what you're going to see is quarter acre lots, because what's being preserved is on the back end of that not a soul will see unless you drive into that neighborhood.
I was not even venturing to go into that argument. We've had that argument before.
It's a legitimate argument.
Well, the
what
argument
you're going to see on the street is quarter acre lots.
Yes, sir. And what I'm talking about here is talking about the view shed issue. All right? That's all I'm talking about in this particular case for right now. And what I'm trying to say is, these lots, this is a house that's on the same side of the street, and it's in the woods. It's more of a wooded lot. This is a typical AG1 that's there now. I assume it's one of the near neighbors. And in the ones that are a little bit more wooded, your view sheds are not so obstructed, even though they might be closer to the road. Carter, can you do the next one for me, sir? My point is, My point I'm trying to make, Paul, is I want to make sure we're going to get what we're arguing for. This is the particular property. I put my car on there and tried to push it back about 100 feet from the road. And I don't know if that's right. I just parked it out there and I walked it off and said, okay, there's what's it going to look like. And I went back out to the road to see where these things are going to be. That's where you are going to have a row of houses there. If they're on quarter-acre lots or third-acre lots, whatever is on, on the latest one of these maps. I don't know what actual sizes these are. But I guess my general argument is I don't see, again, I'm not arguing necessarily for this for approval. What I'm trying to say is I don't see so much as how visually this is going to be much different than what we're already seeing up there in the new development. Particularly the one that's fixing to be built in the pasture. I mean, they are going to be wide open out there, and they're going to be at least as big as the ones that are already there. And so I just want to make sure when we say, hey, we don't want to do something like this, we are okay with getting what we're going to get. And it's not, I'm not talking about it. I know we're supposed to be just thinking about this, but we're going to be talking about this more and more. And it is the issue of what are we trading to get, and are we getting what we meant to get?
Noel, I promise you, we won't be addressing this a whole lot more if we make a bold statement that we're willing. It's not even a bold statement; it's a consistent statement. And the fact is that we're willing to enforce consistently and fairly the parameters that have been set by Milton, that have set us apart from the rest of the greater North Fulton area for as long as we've been a city and many years before that. And yes, there has been a cry for some more conservation. And I promise you that that's on the hearts and minds of all of us at this table, and it's in the hearts and minds of the people in the community tonight.
For sure. No question about it. On both sides of the issue.
But I promise you, what you cannot visualize, especially in contrast to what you've shown us tonight, is what this will look like.
Can't.
When you go from 1 acre lots to quarter acre lots, and you go from 20% coverage to 50% coverage. I promise you, there is no way that we could fathom what that's going to look like, and I promise you, once we see it, we won't be able to stomach it, because it's going to be so obscene compared to what we've ever done before.
This is not Milton.
Milton is not asking. Milton is not asking for quarter acre lots in AG1, and they are certainly not asking for quarter acre lots in equestrian estate areas that were defined as a character area for us.
So,
whether another Milton resident drives down that road today to see it or not, that is not what I'm charged with measuring. What I am charged with measuring and taking account for, and have been charged with in the seat that I hold, is making sure that I do what is best for Milton. And I promise you, and I want to address something else you said, which and Noel, with all due respect, I have a lot of respect for you, and I have a lot of respect for Karen Thurman, who sits in this as well. But to suggest that her commentary the other night was something for us to hold in high regard, when in my interpretation of what she said that night was shame on the people who came and expressed an opinion that was other than hers.
That's not what she
said.
said.
And there are opposing opinions.
You should watch it.
I sat here,
yeah,
I listened to it, and I couldn't have found it more offensive.
Wow.
Because what she was saying was, your opinion is not the same as mine, and as such, I'm not really interested in hearing it. And yeah, I'll tell you what, when there is information that's not necessarily completely accurate, you know what, I can endure that, because we've got concerned citizens who are not experts on any of this, any more than you or I are, in the kinds of things we're asking them to address on a one-off basis. Now, I will tell you, because we have the repetition of some of this stuff, that maybe we have a little more experience with it, but I'm not an expert on it. But I applaud their efforts to come out and express their opinions. And for us to suggest that they've got to have every single detail actually correct. We heard errors on both sides tonight.
Yeah, but that's not the comment that was being made.
Well,
okay, that's not the comment that was being made.
Well, that's for your interpretation versus my interpretation.
Yes, sir.
And I promise you that there were others who spoke to me since that presentation that found it just as offensive as I did.
So,
and it's unfortunate that she was trying to shut down, I think, future opposition on this kind of discussion. But the charge that we have, Noel, is one that's real simple. And the charge was also represented by our staff tonight. They're asked to make measure of what is consistent with our land use policies today, and are the things that are before us consistent with what is designed as Milton today. And what they told us in several assessments tonight, one after another, that this development
Did not meet the bar.
does not meet the bar.
Yes, sir.
Now, it doesn't mean we have to accept staff's recommendation, because that's what we sit here for. We're allowed to accept it, deny it, or defer it. Those are the three choices we have.
So do we want to make a motion now, or
Let's
do
make
we
a
want to
motion.
continue on our soapboxes?
Let's make a motion.
Well, I think it's important that we hear some of it, because,
I'm-
because if we don't do some of this,
And
Chris,
I'm-
I know.
this debate will go on for
I
a
know.
lot longer.
Yeah,
Let me be with you, Paul, that's saying, if that's the way we choose, and I really try not to be on a team, and I try to examine them. I'm okay if we decide not to do this. But then why would we hear another one next week or next month and 3 months if we've drawn some lines and said absolutely not this way? Then we shouldn't look at that way again, at least so soon, or at least unless it's
That's why we're
modified
working
in a great deal.
That's why we're working on
that's my
AG1
point.
enhancements. That's what we've been charged to do as a planning commission, is to work on the things that are supposed to be what the vision for Milton is going forward.
And that's
to
what I'm saying.
find those
more.
alternatives, to find the ways to conserve the green space. And I promise you, this is not what the community is asking us to do. To put whatever the size homes are, the $700,000 homes on a 50% coverage on quarter-acre lots. That is not what the voice of the community is saying when they're saying, find us a way to conserve Milton with more green space. Now, I will tell you, there's a component of green space preservation in here, but this isn't it.
It's
in terms of-
self-serving. I mean, it has.
Absolutely, it's self-serving. So,
Would the community accept this if you couldn't see the houses from the road?
I don't think so.
If you couldn't
I
see
don't
any
think so.
part of this,
No.
would they accept it?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Why not?
In my opinion, you're increasing the density.
No, if you didn't increase density.
Oh,
And
if
you
you made
made a
if you
plan
made
like this.
true
the
density neutral?
True density neutral.
Then
You
it's
couldn't
just-
see
then
some
it's
of
just
from the
AG1.
road. No, with the smaller lots. But you couldn't see it from the road. Would they accept that?
more than what that is, but still, what's wrong with our 1 acre minimums?
I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I'm
That's
just
been
asking
protecting
an
us from
alternative.
day one since the city was incorporated.
But your point's good because,
Absolutely.
Mark, and both
No,
of your points are
I know.
good, because if we feel like it wouldn't get accepted, in any case, or in these cases that like Mark's presenting, even if you couldn't see it, or if it was on the backside, then that should keep us from having to hear another one that goes that way. We don't have to waste the applicant's time or the staff's time.
This could have been a short discussion if we were willing to accept staff's recommendation, which is for denial of all of this, based on some of those things we're being asked to measure, which is green space and setbacks and lot coverage and tree preservation and stormwater. I mean, the list is very long.
Yes, sir.
And that's the reason staff's recommend denial. I mean, I think, gave it the ad nauseum debate tonight because we are concerned about what's going to come next.
That's the key.
And so
What's
this is
next?
the kind of stuff we have to say no to, so we don't get this the next time. Because somebody
You're
said,
still
hey,
gonna
is it
get
anything
this.
like the Bridgewater application? And they can say, yeah, it's a lot like it. And you can say, well, you know what? That isn't going to fly in Milton, and it should never fly in Milton. I make a motion that we deny RZ 16-02 and BC 16-01 as staff has recommended.
I'll second that. We got a motion and a second discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Is there any opposed?
No.
Okay, 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for staying. I appreciate that.
You good, brother?
Thank you.
Debate.
Sir?
I love spirited debate.
No, sir.
Yeah, we need to do
I
it.
want to get to the end of
So,
the.
can I get a motion?
The ends of these
Let's get a
arguments,
motion for
not-
adjournment.
Not still have
We
them
got,
hanging out.
we got one more meeting after
So
this.
moved.
Okay. Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hey, everyone, we have a green space bond meeting. If you're interested, it's going to be on the ballot in November. We're going to start right now.
I just want to
2 minutes.
You gotta go to the bathroom, Gary? Okay. If you could have your conversations outside, we're about to start our next meeting.
I just want to be sure. I'm not hurt. Not one bit. Good. Hi, this is for the next meeting. Sorry, I'm just rushing it to you.
I'm going to do public comment.
Trying to hurry.
How
I
many
didn't know we
public
were in there.
comments you got?
I didn't know we were in the discussion period, so I was fighting.
You know how many-
we're always
in-
we're
always
in
the
discussion
period. You know, okay. Hey, Robin, how many public comment cards do you have for this, for the Greenspace meeting? Because I want to.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry you had to walk my water boy there. And actually, this is Robin's. I just bought it because I didn't have it.
Yeah,
And you can have
if everyone could step outside the room, please, unless you're going to stay for our meeting, that would be much appreciated. I appreciate it. Yeah, if you want to grab a comment card, grab a green comment card if you have, if you want to talk about the Greenspace bond. We'll be here till about 3 a.m. Thank you.
Are we going to have a 5-minute break?
Yeah, 5-minute break. Yeah, go. We'll let them fill out the cards.
I think I'm.
Yeah, go.
I didn't get a chance to do my
I don't know.
classes.
It wasn't right.
Yeah, go. Go for it. I was like,
I need to smoke real quick.
you can vapor inside, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. This is still on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we're all set. Yeah, we have it, Laura. We have it. I gave it to her. Yeah.
I mean, you read all that, the survey stuff, and they're like, even though it's survey, was like, there's no fucking figures about it. You need to get to this side of the property.
So what will end up happening is this will end up getting developed as AG1. Probably get like 32 lots. I want it. That's fine. You know, so they probably get 32 lots, and that'll be in state lots.
Well, the other thing they said in there is that dam. I mean, you can't develop it because
Oh,
of
no.
that dam.
No
The
way.
dam's a massive
You got
problem.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. I walked it. It was nuts.
And so there's huge issues. I mean, there's a
All right, you ready for this
significant
meeting?
amount of
No,
cost.
You ready?
I'm not ready for any more meetings. This is ridiculous.
Oh,
I think all the Greenspace stuff, if it rhymes with, sounds like,
Okay.
what I want.
or looks like
So,
Wakapani, that's
we're gonna
all
take
we
the
want.
bond and we're gonna buy up.
Wakapani did not get bought up to
I can't believe that. We're gonna take the bond money, we're gonna buy up all the
That's all we
agricultural
want.
land.
I'm going to buy like a
Yeah.
So that way,
No,
so
that's
they
my fault.
can't develop
Just
it.
boom.
Combine them?
And,
But will that
all-
pass?
You can combine them.
No, it's not gonna pass anyway.
That's why I think
Well, I'm
some
throwing
stuff
mine away.
needs to be.
You can have mine if you want it.
I don't want it. I'll just take it to my recycler.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's gonna pass at all. I think you're talking too much bad on people and that.
And it's an election year.
Yes.
I agree. I'm with you 100% on that. I mean, I think that's why I think we need to make it.
What I don't understand is why these groups can't get together and come up with a common compromise.
Is this going to be, do you guys feel this is going to
They
be
want,
wrong?
we're not gonna serve
Well,
Greenspace if we
Yeah,
continue
what do
the
we
way
even,
we're
I don't
going.
even know what the point of
Greenspace
this
won't be
is. Are we
conserved,
just
I
supposed to try
promise.
to agree on
Yeah,
some sort of list?
we're going to try to dwindle this down a little bit. Not everything.
Every other
Start
one,
dwindling
Christmas
down.
tree.
We will agree on some stuff.
I'm saying, we're
I'm
gonna take
voting
all
yes.
our bond money and buy up
We're gonna
all the
take this.
agricultural land, so it's not developed. I'm assuming that's a
Well, that's the
couple
end of that,
billion
I
dollars
think,
that we
is
have to
the end.
spend.
I was expecting.
You said midnight.
We gotta do something though, Paul, 'cause if not.
I hate it when you're right.
You're right.
One item on the agenda again. Every time we have one item.
One items kill us.
Well, it's already
Hurts.
seen the public
It
comment.
is, it's a
I mean,
curse.
it could have been
Oh, yeah, this
developed
is the
better.
last one.
I mean, and I could have, if you want to
He's
see
gone.
a good
He's gone.
development.
He is
obviously, we're on
grandfathered in.
sewer and-
Great grandfather.
He's great grandfather.
Ready?
Yep. If everybody can take a seat, please, or carry your conversation outside, we're about to start.
They didn't take them down.
Pledge allegiance again?
No, this is a work session. All right, Kathy, if you'll go ahead and start the meeting.
Although it could have been.
We have to sing the national anthem.
This time. Canadian or
Fly
Good
over.
evening. Thank you, everybody, for staying. And I'm going to try and make this my little intro short so you just understand what's going on and so that we can get to the public comment period. Sorry, my back is to you right now. The City Council has asked the Planning Commission to get input from the public. I hate turning my back to it, too, sorry. The input from the public on what citizens want in terms of preserving green space or open space in our city. The Commission is then to come up with a list of criteria or standards to later identify areas within the city that can be preserved. The preservation of these lands would be done either through land acquisition, conservation easements, or through the transfer of development rights process. The funding for the purchase or easements of these lands could come from a bond that the city is currently considering, impact fees being collected from developers and new residents, outside funding like possible state or federal grants, or from the TDR process. Please note that the criteria are meant to be somewhat general in nature and should not identify any specific parcels of land or addresses. I also wanted to mention from the start that any and all land acquisition or conservation easements during this process will be from willing landowners who want to sell their land or be compensated for an easement on it. So we will not be dealing with any eminent domain issues in this process. I have set up some maps up here in the front of the room that may help the Commission and the public to get an idea of our trail system, and these are trail maps, and of our parcel size. The tall one right there talks about shows the parcel sizes in Milton. And the one next to that on the left of that is the trail map, and there's information on these boards right here about our trails. In addition, I have the results from an online survey that was sent out on February 9th, and you can pick up a copy of those results at the table over there in the front. Also on that table is the criteria list from the last Planning Commission workshop on March 10th. We went over on my flip chart right there, and I typed that out and put it on a paper, so if you want to see the criteria that was brought up at the last meeting. If you want to speak or comment tonight, I encourage you to do so, since the idea for this meeting is to get public input on what the citizens want to be preserved for green space. So this is about you giving us input. I have green comments cards over there. You can come up and speak. You can write something on there and have me speak. Read what you said. I will also be working at the flip chart again tonight and writing down your comments or criteria on the flip chart as we go. Let's see. And that's about it. So we have the survey results over there. We have the criteria from the last meeting over there for you to pick up in the comment cards. So I will open up now to public comment. And
how many do we have?
Okay, and just, we're trying to be a little bit less formal at these, so if you just want to come up and speak as I write some comments on the flipboard, please come up and do that. We also have Laura Bentley. Okay.
And real quick, the goal of this meeting is we're going to start working on this list and trying to maneuver it, try to take off some of the stuff that we don't feel is pertinent, and trying to combine things that have been repeated in this list. So that's our goal. So we want to hear from the public, but let's try to keep it as brief as possible so we can really get down to working. But we do want to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't stand before you without thanking you for your, we've all been here for your prior meeting. I mean, I know it's brutal, but it's so important, and we so appreciate what you do. I mean, you care, and we appreciate it. So thank you. I know we have differing opinions, but public opinion is so important, and it's appreciated, even when it differs.
Thank you.
So I'll make it quick, because I haven't eaten my dinner yet.
Name and address also.
Okay,
Thank you.
Laura Bentley, 2500 Bethany Church Road, Milton, Georgia. I love Greenspace. I'm for it. I have a horse farm. We moved here so that we could have our own personal green space, but it is also shared and loved by my neighbors, for those that walk down Bethany Church Road. I guess I would be in favor of a green space bond, and I know you're charged with the criteria, I think we put the cart before the horse. We have a huge asset in Birmingham Park, 203 acres. It is the biggest treasure of our state, maybe the Southeast, and we have it. And I would say that we would be very remiss if we talked about Greenspace without taking that and putting it into a trust forever for future generations so that it's a passive park. There's nothing that we can do. When I look at that map of undeveloped land, how could we even come close to that? 203 acres is bigger than Piedmont Park. I'm not against Greenspace. I think that the priorities, we need to show that it's a priority, and we need to take that park and preserve it forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the city of Milton owns that park.
That's my understanding.
So don't they control?
You live at Scarlet Oak Trail, right? Taking a guess. I don't know the number of that.
Cook at 615 Scarlet Oak Trail. Conservation Trust in there.
You knew it.
I too agree with what Lauren's saying, that we've got a tremendous asset with that open space. And again, I think, if we had to really look as a community how we can use it and shape it into something that could be quite beautiful, I think that's something that we really need to consider. We do have certain shortcomings in our community. Just to say a bond referendum should be used for this one thing, be it green space, I think that term can be used in a number of different ways. The first thing I look at for the shortcomings in our community is how it affects our youth. And I think the biggest problem that I see is that we really don't have a community recreation building. That building could be accommodated very easily, a small section within that park. We have very limited facilities for any indoor sports. We have nothing for basketball players, gymnasts, weightlifters, a number of things that are done indoors. If anything, they have to share facilities with the schools or perhaps with other churches and other activities. I personally, when I grew up, we had the ability to get to a gym. If I wanted to, I could practice at that gym and not necessarily have to think that a school was going to open up for me so I could practice. It doesn't make sense how we're doing it. And we need to have a facility that's on our own where we can have youth programs. We're doing it for soccer, we're doing it for football, we're doing it for baseball, but I think we're really hurting basketball. I know looking at me, you can't tell I was a basketball player in my youth, but I was fortunate to be 5'10" at the age of 8, I believe. So I was very tall and had a great time being a basketball player for about 7 years, so everybody caught up. But I think, again, it was a great thing that we participated in, and we are selling our youth short by not having something like this. On the second issue, we also need to have that same facility, some type of swimming pool. We have two wonderful high schools here that could be competing with some very other good schools in swim programs and dive programs, but we don't have those capabilities. Again, you can't tell I was a swimmer, but I swam a good bit, and it was from doing swimming all the time. The shoulders got big from just not working, but also from the breaststroke and butterfly. We have many. The second issue is we have many gravel roads, and we should be using those for walking trails, and people are using them for walking trails. But what we're missing is we don't have any real defined parking lots, water fountains, trash cans, and really making that a designated area where somebody could park, walk on those roads, and enjoy themselves. Presently, there are a couple places, I know in particular on Wood Road, in elsewhere, Phillips Circle, where people kind of park, and I'm not sure they're parking legally or not, but they just kind of park there, and the city's been good enough to push gravel over there. But I think this is something that we really need to look at and say, here's some great areas. I used to walk it all the time, and I would park over there. Unfortunately, I would park with my neighbors where we kept our horse, so I would park my car there and walk instead of parking where everybody else is. But I think that's a great idea for using some of those areas to create a parking area and actually make it. Because I think walking on a gravel road is much better than some of these asphalt or paved surfaces, because in some cases when I'm with my dog, I don't want to get run over by a bicyclist. I want to go someplace where it's nice and easy. The second thing the city really needs to do, and I think they're doing it, I talked with Carter just now, that in their transportation plan, they really need to address the trail system. What he told me, they're coming out with a report on April 11th to the council. But this is important from the perspective of connecting our ultimate greenway that's over in Roswell and Alpharetta and really Forsyth County, and connecting that and perhaps having a trail system. And at the same time, perhaps connecting some of those to some of the schools, some of these gravel roads I just mentioned, and in addition, maybe even some of the utility transmission lines that in the long run could make excellent places where we wanted to kind of extend on. We may have to go along a paved road for a certain distance and then tie into a utility system. But all these utility lines that are overland have to have roads for those utility companies to get to put some gravel on it, to do some treatment to it, may not be such a hard thing to do. Policing it, although we create trails, we've got to be careful, because then you get into the issue of policing. So we also have to be careful about what we create. Fourth thing, I think you're on a slippery slope of buying land that could benefit only one area. You could have an individual who says, okay, I'm ready to sell my land. Well, my neighbor's ready to sell my land. You got 3 or 4 people that sell it because they're willing, but I don't think that always addresses the ultimate need that we're really looking at for creating a greenscape and viewshed that we're really asking for. I think the more important thing, this is my 5th issue, is really using those dollars along transportation corridors that have busy roads. I think if it was me, I'd be saying, let's look at those busy corridors, let's define additional right-of-way that we need for additional roads, and then accomplish in that right-of-way buying additional space so you could have a corridor, so you could do those connections to the gravel roads and connections to the transmission lines and other places to make good utilization of that land. And then lastly, our roads are very busy. And I'll be honest, I like Greenspace, I developed conservation subdivisions, but I really think some of those funds really need to go for fixing transportation. I've said it to some other folks that when you make a bond referendum and you make it very one-dimensional, your chances of passing that bond are greatly reduced. I think by opening it up and not saying it's a green space bond, but saying that it's a community improvement bond, and then list you want to green space, parks, sidewalks, intersections, transportation, and put 4 or 5 elements to it. I think your overall benefit of having it pass may be much better than just having it somehow crossed over to the conservation subdivision that you're trying to appease that group by making it a one-topic issue. Those are my comments. Thank you so much, and I too appreciate what you do. It's not being fun to look at somebody and make a decision, and you know that affects their life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Scott Schreier.
I'm Scott Sawyer from 787 Quarterpath Lane, Milton. So thank you also for your service and for your hard work on the issue we heard earlier tonight. I'm not really prepared to talk so much about this, but I want to offer a couple of comments since we're still here. And this is a great idea. I'm support a bond. If you guys go that direction, it's a good opportunity to preserve some land. I think, getting back to her comment earlier about the Birmingham Park, just needs to be more standards as far as park signage, development of existing parks. Like when I went there one time, I couldn't really figure out what to do. I didn't know how far you could go. I thought I was on behind the fire station. So just the idea of, where do you park? What's the direction? What's the map? It's just confusing. I recently went to Yosemite Park. Some of you may have been there. And you go, there's a pull-off. It's very natural with posts, and there's directions. There's a trail that's not really that defined, but you know where you're headed at least, and there's information from rangers and things like that. But I think that's sort of missing from Birmingham Park. I would not go back there because I didn't feel like walking. Didn't know what to do with the space in a sense. And then if there's a way to identify, streams or lakes, land around it that might could be preserved, that would be interesting. I know I live near Chicken Creek on the Alfred Athletic Club West, and that's been really beautiful area on Dinsmore Road. It's a natural area that North Valley has. It's spectacular. I'd love to see that happen on that if you can ever get that. And you can't say we want to buy this land from that developer or that owner, but the golf course has issues down the road, I think. I live on the course right now. So that's a lot of land, the back 9 on that space. If you go back there, you'll be surprised. It's the largest tract of land in Milton besides probably Birmingham Park that's undeveloped. But it's along Chicken Creek and has a lot of potential there. And then I guess those are the two main things, just more standards and develop what you already have to ask that. I don't know how you sell a bond like this to a community that's already taxed somewhat. But if we're going to be concerned about development, we need to combine this as well. And the last thing, I don't know if this is part of it, just bike lanes for traffic. A lot of folks bike on Freemanville Road, I live off Freemanville. And it's really quite dangerous. I go way around them, but it's not green, but maybe it is green. I don't know, but that's a neat part of this area is the fact that people can bike out here, but it's not really very safe at all. And it's the issues that John raised about traffic as well. There's just some real problem areas. So I love the roundabouts. I think we all need more roundabouts. Those are fantastic. Things about Milton. So I appreciate your work and glad you're heading this up.
Thank you.
It's a tough job.
Anybody else? Have a caller who wants to speak?
Julie's Honor Bailey, 255 Hickory Flat Road, Milton, Georgia. And one, I support Greenspace. We need more of it. Thank you, and I want to echo the other comments about just thank you for your collective service, your individual service. Been there, done that. It's not easy, but it's necessary. And I also want to say that it is critical that citizens always feel welcome and always have the opportunity to address anybody that's making decisions that impacts all of us. So thank you for your patience with all of us who are simply citizens that care about where we live. I appreciate you always being willing to listen, whether we agree or disagree. With regards to Greenspace, I want to echo the statement about the Birmingham Park, and I've said it before, and I think it's worthy of restating. 203 or 204 acres that we own as a city and as citizens. It is worthy of preserving, and it should be saved for perpetuity. I thought Mr. Sawyer's point was a great one, is that with some very simplistic information, more people can enjoy that beautiful green space that exists today. Boy Scouts have been out there previously and have done some things to just to positively enhance the natural paths. Doesn't cost anything, but just having something that's readily available that doesn't cost anything, that's also preserved, I think is at the heart of what green space preservation is intended to be. So I think we need to take that as a mechanism for how we do market a green space bond to citizens. I'm a citizen, I'm a taxpayer. I have trouble thinking about increasing my taxes for a green space bond if we as a city aren't willing to preserve the very green space that I already helped to pay for. I think it's critical to a green space bond, and I don't think it's a separate issue. I think it ties to it. As you guys will in just a few minutes start to group things, just as I look at the list, I think it's all good, but I think as Mr. Jameson was saying, there's probably a number of these categories that can be collapsed. I think some of the important categories are connectivity of land, so having that kind of big plan so that if we're expending $25 million, that it's not a little piece here and a little piece there, but there's a semblance of continuity. And that continuity not only gives enhancement to the view shed or enhancement to people driving by, it also gives continuity for the wildlife. So I think continuity is kind of a topic. Trails, there's a lot of things that speak about trails. What are those trails? I think if we're talking about green space, it needs to be not concrete. I mean, green space to me is not a concrete walkway. So I think when we're thinking about categories for green space, it needs to actually be green space. Otherwise, it's not really a green space bond. Mr. Myrick, who has been in this community a very long time, he was at the last green space meeting, and he's not here to make this comment, and I'm not speaking on his behalf. But I thought he made a comment that was in contrast to Mr. Recook's. And Mr. Myrick, who's been in the development community for a very long time, and I respect him greatly. I respect Mr. Recook as well. I'm just making the point of Mr. Myrick. He had asked that when you take or have a bond that goes in too many different directions, that you end up with nothing at all. So I kind of have a slightly different perspective that if we're going to do a green space bond, it should be indeed a green space bond that's singularly focused. If we need something that's going to build gym facilities, well, that's a whole different issue. I'm not going to vote for gym facilities if it's a green space bond. Those two are completely counterintuitive. So that would just be my kind of thoughts. You've listened to me way too much this evening. I care about green space. I do think categorically the right categories are in here. I mentioned some of the spaces when you come into Milton from different places. I think that it's making a statement about Milton, so I think that is important. Trees are important. Greenspace is not always just a pasture. Greenspace is also trees and things, but you guys get that. So just thank you for your work tonight, last night, tomorrow. Thank you. It's so appreciated.
Thank you.
I wish it was only 6 o'clock, and I wish I could feed you dinner.
And I just wanted to comment that list you have, that was, just so you know, that was just exactly this, just written down. And we also have started, and we haven't categorized yet. So we're still just getting in. Sure, just so you know what that was just that, put on that. And then, so everybody's all set, we haven't categorized yet.
Fred's grandfather, dude. He can,
Anybody else, that wants
I can be a
to comment?
grandfather.
Oh, Tim, I'm sorry.
I am. You can take a bathroom break and not come back.
Tim Becker, 15625 Canterbury Chase, Milton, Georgia. First of all, I want to apologize if my passion has offended anybody up here. I mean, we're citizens. We're trying to figure things out. We don't get everything right. But, and sometimes maybe the passion gets the better of us sometimes, okay? But I want what's best for Milton, and, we come here on a Wednesday night just like you guys do, spend 3 or 4 hours, and, I hope that that's appreciated. And I would extend the same invitation to you guys that I extended to the council. If you think we're getting something wrong, if you think we're exaggerating, anybody, give us a call. Send us an email. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a problem in Milton in that sometimes we're sort of feel like supplicants here, and that there's this level difference, and it's a little frustrating to us at times, particularly with council. You get that with council. There's an arrogance there sometimes. So, I would like for them to, call us. And if we're saying something wrong, don't call me. And tell me if we're exaggerating.
I'm pretty direct, so if I hear you.
Let's go to the bond. Let's hear about the bond.
So, I'm sorry it's late. I just wanted to say that. So, as far as the Greenspace bond, I'm neutral on it right now. I want to see the details. I do know people in Milton who say they like the merits of the issue, but they're a little worried about the process, because people worry about the process of Milton. $25 million floating out there, people are going to want to, get at it. So I just want to echo the comments on Birmingham Park. I mean, it's a great park, and we need to kind of, that kind of sets the tone, if you will. We got to do something there. I think we got to put it into a trust. Gyms, swimming pools, that kind of stuff, that needs to be out of this completely. I don't get that at all. In terms of maybe some new ideas relative to criteria, if there's anything we can do around burying power lines, and I don't know if that's ever been mentioned.
And what power lines?
Burying the power lines. Yeah, putting them underground.
Okay.
So, because if you're talking about rural view shed, I mean, the power lines are some kind of, we almost don't notice them anymore. The second thing is, and this is, I'm not going to be able to articulate this well, but sort of influence-proof criteria. So, let's make this really tight to where people, when they look at how the money's dispensed, they don't say, hey, yeah, I know why that guy's land got bought or whatever. It's going to be tough to do. And then the last thing, I've just mentioned this before, if we're talking about green areas, I think it's important that they be contiguous. That's it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Jacqueline, 14810 East Bluff Road in Milton. First couple comments I have, the first one I have, I don't know if anybody's been up to Birmingham Park in the last few weeks, but they now have a sign up there at the parking area with the trail plan.
Yeah.
All the trails have been marked, color-coded, and the trail plan is up, and it really looks nice. I don't know if that was...
The trails of Birmingham Park trails?
Trails in Birmingham Park. The trails that have been created in Birmingham Park over
good.
the last 5 or 6 years, but then somebody got out there and marked them with color codes, and now the trails are actually on a map that you can sort of figure out where you are, maybe not get lost.
Are there any markings on the trails themselves,
Yes,
Jack?
Yes.
They've marked.
Oh,
Boy
good.
Scouts.
with colored splotches on trees.
We could put
quite
that on the
regularly,
website so
like
people
every
print it out.
Good.
You know?
40 feet.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah, so. Yeah, yeah. And I think you could do it without getting lost.
Yeah, I've done it without getting lost.
Well, I've done a lot, so I know where the trails are.
Yeah.
And regarding Birmingham Park, I mean, I think the idea of never developing it is certainly something I'm in favor of, but I don't think that costs any money not to develop it. And to put it into a trust, if you were to get a land trust to do it, then that would cost some money, but it's not a lot.
Well, you could put an easement on it.
Yeah.
You could put a conservation easement on it.
Right.
If that was.
Right,
something that
through a
was
land,
decided.
through a land trust. I mean, the point is, if we're saying what the city should say it's never going to be developed, the city can say that. Doesn't have to do anything, doesn't have to cost a dime. You just say, we're never going to develop it. Problem is that 10 years from now, another city council can say, yeah, we're going to develop it. So that's the issue. The comments I wrote down here are a couple that came from the last meeting. I want to emphasize what Kathy has already said, that we have to make sure that people understand we're not going to be talking about eminent domain for any of this, because as soon as we start getting that in people's minds, it's a sure killer for the thing. And I said this before, and this idea that we need to sort of spread the wealth, and I think that part of the money ought to be spent on small pocket parks in the Deerfield and Crab Apple area. Land for, not the park itself, not the infrastructure for the park, but to buy the land to make a pocket park. And that would, I think, generate support in that part of the community that might not be there otherwise. And the last thing is, I think I want to disagree with Walt in this sense. I think,
No way.
No
way.
I know. I have.
No way.
It's hard for me to do, but
Jack can play basketball.
I think that, and I guess agree with Julie in this. I think that if it's going to be a Greenspace bond, it really ought to be a
What?
Greenspace bond, and we ought to talk
I
about
know.
buying land
Yeah.
or easements or acquiring some sort of access to property. I love Paul's comment last time about the purchase lease thing. I don't know what that's.
Yeah,
what
it's
it's
close.
called.
Yeah.
Purchase lease.
Lease
Buy
purchase
land
or-
lease it back to somebody.
Buy lease.
When
We
I
buy
was-
it, lease it back to the,
Right.
some sort of use.
You know, that would be a great way to maintain some of the really key features, the horse farms, and I don't know if we have any actual farms in Milton anymore that actually grow things, but there probably are some in the outlying areas of them. But, well, besides, I mean, grow food.
Cows.
So, anyway, that I think is a good
You
idea.
mean vegetables.
And so I think that we need to structure the bond referendum in the sense of telling people we're going to buy land and easements and that sort of thing with it, as opposed to spending money on infrastructure. And I think, you know, all the ideas that Walt came up with, I think were all great ideas. It's just that I think that those things that aren't land ought to come out of the impact fees and taxes in general, rather than special taxes on green space. And the final comment is based on that. I think that for the trail plan, we ought to be spending money on easements and not on the trail. I think, and I would like to see it when we structure the bond, we tell people what they're voting for. We tell them you're not spending money, your taxes, on building trails. What you're spending money on is to provide land on which trails can eventually be built. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Do you guys have any ideas?
You already spoke, Walt. I just wanted to just make sure, everybody else?
Whoa, this is rezoning? What's going on here?
Yeah, we've got a rebuttal here.
The only reason I come back up is sometimes when you do go with a bond referendum, when you start saying yes, 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 to 3 or 4 different issues, you're more inclined to say everything's yes. if you have just one issue, you can somehow get caught up into that one issue. I've seen a lot of bond referendums passed, I've seen also some that failed. The ones that have been more successful have had more issues, where there's a number of issues on it versus just one. Just one typically fails. I don't know why, it just does. That's at least what I've been told by different people that fund bonds. And I'm not the expert, but I think the city needs to do some research with their certain bankers that do nothing but fund bonds for cities. That if they check with them, they'll find out what I'm saying could be true. And that's the only reason why.
They are going to hire someone to do exactly that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any other comment before we kind of start narrowing down some stuff? All right. Anyone want to start, or you want me to?
Yes,
Mark. Sure.
Before we get into narrowing it, can I ask some questions
Sure.
on the actual the mechanics
Absolutely.
of a bond?
Absolutely.
So let's say we approved $25 million, $30 million bond. Okay. How is that paid? How is that distributed? How does it affect, like, the millage rate? I mean, we must have some idea of how it's going to be paid for, right?
Okay. Yeah, so I will tell you, Stacy Inglis is the person to ask about this, but yes, it will be, what's been talked about, it will be a tax, a millage rate kind of increase, and a tax on your property tax, increase in the property tax.
Based on, does $30 million in Greenspace benefit everyone in the community, in the city, in the sense of, do all see some type of appreciation for our homes? Does it affect the value, or is it going to be somebody that has 25 acres is just going to pay a lot more than somebody that just has an acre? You know what I'm saying? Because of the millage versus, is there appreciable benefit across the board for the city that would see, because we have all this green space?
Shared burden.
Shared burden.
Yeah.
So just trying to understand that what this is going to impact.
Fair and equitable.
Yeah.
Well, it is going to be based on, and the property tax, what your value of your property is. So that, I think that's the only way they can do that. But I think what we just talked about in the meeting before this was just green space in general, and how are we going to get green space? Everybody seems to want green space. If we can't do it through a development like this is just a way that we can possibly do that for the benefit of the whole community, even if it's not right next door to them. Maybe it will make Milton preserve that feel, that rural feel, or something like that. So maybe that would be the benefit.
Not for all that, but I'm just, when people say, what does this mean to me? What's this going to cost me?
Mm-hmm.
That's the questions.
And
I'd like to know before we did it, in a sense of, what's this mean?
Well, we will know way before it gets onto the ballot. This is just the first process. Is do we want to preserve what do we want to preserve in green space? Do we want to preserve it, and what types of things do we want to preserve? And then after that, we will determine how much it's going to be. And we have a consultant that started work already, the feasibility of the bond, and they will help us with that. And then they will talk to the people that do bonds and the bankers to see how much the bond is going to be, how much the citizens are willing to pay in their property taxes. That's one of the polling that we're going to be doing with the Trust for Public Land. They're going to poll people and say, how much can you stand to pay in taxes for a green space bond? And that's part of the polling that will happen.
I just think that would have been done first, to get a threshold and to understand that more before you start to try to build what you're going to get. But that's all.
Okay.
I will say it's all being done
concurrently.
Okay.
In a very tight time frame.
Okay.
So there's several tracks that we're going.
Okay.
And it should be that should be done about the same time that you guys are done with this on April 27th. So they've already started on that feasibility research. They've already started, and they will be working, probably until about the end of April. I don't know the exact date that their report will be done, but they will present that to the council, and any of you will be invited, of course, to that presentation also on the feasibility and the polling also.
Thank you.
Okay. Quick question while we're going over the criteria, Kathy, and I might be wrong, but I know that has green space. Now, on the city website, is it called Park and Green Space Bond? Because I want to say I saw that today. I wasn't.
So on the website, in the resolution that was passed by the city council, the wording was put in Park and Green Space in that. With the communications director, we're trying to brand it, and when they brand it, you don't want to be too wordy.
Right.
So we use just the word green space because we believe that could include parks also.
Okay.
So we didn't want to have it too wordy. So the branding is just Green Space Bond, Green Space Milton. Just something short and quick, which would encompass several things, and one of them could be parks.
Okay.
But parks active versus passive, that's an interesting.
That's for the public and for you guys to determine in the criteria. I think the intent, from what I've been told, is for passive parks. That was the intent going forward, and that's part of this process on what the public wants. Do you want active park versus public park? Passive park. And I will tell you, the survey and several things, our criteria so far, it all seems to go towards passive parks. If parks at all, for the people that did mention parks, it was much more passive.
Okay.
In looking at the criteria, Kathy, it looks like to me there's about 4 of them that can be combined into one, which would total about 44% of the total responses. Because if you do one, you're doing the other. Protecting important natural resources.
Right.
Well, you do that, you got a wildlife habitat already built into
Right.
it. It's probably going to be around the watersheds, and there'll be green space and open space. So, to me, if we combine those 4 into one, then we've covered that whole thing. We don't need to have those separately broken.
And I'll tell you why it's this way, because the survey question that we put out as on the first page of that, when it says actual online survey question, it asked, what do you think? And it gave those 4 examples.
Right.
And so many people took those examples, and then wrote exactly that.
Yeah.
I'll copy everything. And then some of the other things that I added were things that came up a lot. So that's where I got to those categories that I put in the survey. This doesn't have to stay this way at all. This is just a way to tell you, because some of it, as you see up above there where it says characteristic or criteria groupings, I tried to explain based on the responses, what does green space, open space mean? What does protect historic resources? And they do, and those definitions do overlap there.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Because it's hard, because everybody writes different comments, and a lot of people said historic resources. It was one of the examples. But historic resources, I don't know that we have actually designated real historic landmarks, how many we really have. And so I got the feeling from the responses, it was more people think that the old horse farms, that's historic, an old barn that's been there for a long time, that's what they're thinking of as being historic somewhat, and old historic houses.
But
So,
and I think that goes to a point that sometimes, at some point, the city really does need to, the city does need to really keep a registry of that historic.
and I think they're trying to.
You're working on it? Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Just updated recently.
Oh, good. Oh,
and we're
fantastic.
working with,
Oh, good.
Councilmember Lust to come up with a signage program.
Good.
To sign all of those historical resources.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Great, okay.
So I think on Gabriel's point, I think you can combine all of that into one. I think one thing that is, like, in my opinion, is a no-brainer is adjacent to other city-owned property or parks. So we have that large contiguous space. I think that's a no-brainer. Anything? I'll just start throwing out.
And then Gary, I'm sorry. Would you again tell me which ones that you said could all go into
green
one?
Space, open space, protect important natural resources, wildlife habitat, and watersheds. Because they overlap each other.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Kathy, when you're asking him to combine, we're talking about 2 different documents. Gabriel's using the survey criteria.
Yes, that's what I'm looking at.
That's what we're talking about.
You're not looking at this list.
No, I'm not looking at that
Okay.
right now.
Oh, okay.
But what will
I'm
happen
looking at the
is,
survey.
once you do
was looking at
that,
both.
then a lot of this will fall into place.
You
for
can
the
plug
criteria.
them into.
You can plug those into the criteria, and it simplifies it to some extent.
Okay.
So tell me the list again, I'm sorry, Gary.
It would be this one,
Yep,
this one,
yep,
this one.
yep, and the bottom one, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they're the same thing. If you
Yeah,
do
yeah,
one-
those are all kind of the
Yeah, if you do one,
natural.
you've done the others.
Right, right. And I do want to say when we say open space, and this is just from me reading all the surveys.
Yeah, I
when we
understand.
say open space, and I know well, Julie's gone. When she talked about it, for the other thing, it's like things that are not built on. You know what I mean? When,
Yeah.
You know, green and open
Oh,
can
yeah.
mean the same thing. It's just not built on.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want, Chris? Golf course?
And then.
Let me see.
And do you think another category could be the rural? I mean, the rural view, rural feel, rural. There was a
Well,
lot of rural talk.
You know, and I don't know how you put that in a criteria and how you mold that onto the ballot, but I think you're correct. And I think, but trail connections, connection of trails, since that was an obvious one that was on the survey.
Right.
And I think that helps as far as the park. I mean, I consider that kind of a park, the trails, I consider a trail connection.
I don't see that as being.
You don't think so?
green space,
Is that a
though.
stretch?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've got a trail plan. We have budget in our standard budget to improve, add on to trails. I mean, again, this is.
See what it's.
I think
think
again,
so?
it's green space. It's buildable land that we want to preserve and keep houses from being built on. That's the main objective of this to me.
Does
I
it
guess
have
my
to be
question-
buildable? I mean,
Yeah, why
well,
not?
no, but I'm saying like Chicken Foot Creek or Chicken Foot.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
it'd have-
there's
that's-
houses there.
well,
You
that's
could
gonna be
expand
preserved anyway.
that area, but you could expand around it, and it may not necessarily be buildable, but you'd be expanding a natural area.
Well, you can
So
get
is
the
that
easements
negative to
too.
not be-
I mean, we're talking about easements also.
Yes, so we are. That's a big part of this, and we're talking about putting
I'm just
easements,
saying-
so it's cheaper than buying land outright.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
just
no, I understand,
worried-
but I know land around like the Chicken Creek, just you buy on the south side of it, I guess. There's a house that's for sale that could be knocked down with a couple acres, and you just buy, like the gentleman said, there's a lot of land behind there that you could not develop something, but have open space that's not buildable, but it'd still be great space to have.
Well, would that go under like the water and watersheds, like lands around
Yeah, I get that.
waterways?
Yep.
I don't know why we'd spend money on that.
See, and so that's. So,
I mean, as a
well,
taxpayer, I mean,
yeah.
no one's going to do anything with that anyway. So why am I going to take money and buy something
Land
along
that
a
can't
creek
be
bed?
built.
Some people
Yeah,
have
I mean,
suggested
some
putting
people like
trails.
trails.
Some people have suggested, and actually one of my
I'm
maps.
trying to
is-
add stuff that
He's taking.
that can make this work for the entire community. That's the reason why I would say trails, walking paths, because if you say we're going to spend $25 million to buy a bunch of land for us to look at,
It's not to look at; it's to keep it from being
But-
developed.
in my opinion, the chances of
I
that,
mean, it's not.
I think.
Unless you said, I think it's more easements. I don't think we're going to end up buying hardly any land.
I
outright
agree with
owning
that.
land.
No, I
It's gonna
agree with
be-
that 100%.
We
Well,
won't
it's-
be able to
it's-
afford to buy
Yeah,
that.
No.
it is cheaper, and then you get more bang for your buck on
Yeah.
doing an easement. So
Absolutely.
we would definitely always try and do that first.
Liquor store.
But some people might not want to do an easement; they just want to sell the whole thing. I mean, it just kind of depends with
Yeah.
each
Well,
parcel.
I think I think you're on the right track, Kathy, when you talk about there are things that are natural assets today that are not used for things other than view shed. And that's some of the things that you identified, the green space, open space, the natural resources, the wildlife habitat, and the watersheds. So I think there's a healthy contingency, that's a right word, there's a healthy inventory of community that's going to say, those are all good things. And I want you to make sure you have an inventory of that is going to ensure that look and feel of Milton is preserved. because that's what I drive by. That's what I see when I come into Milton. That's what creates a sense of place for Milton that's different and apart from some of the surrounding areas. So in my mind, that's kind of one grouping.
Like the rural view shed. I know we don't like to use that word sometimes for people, but
it
amongst
is that. And in,
rural view shed.
To Gary's point, some of those things are already there. It's floodplain areas that aren't going to be developed, or it's steep slopes that are not going to be developed, or it's. Let me just leave it there for a second, and then get to my second point. And then there's the other side of this that is also needs to be contemplated based on some of the things people said to us is things where the community can actively engage that space, whether it's a passive park where I can walk on a trail, or it's a passive park that's just an open meadow, or it's a multi-purpose trail, but it's without a lot of development to it. It's still pervious surface, and it's they can go see the wildlife, or they can go enjoy the flowers.
And that's something that could be an overlap. Let's say there was I was saying this to Peyton earlier, let's say there was a 5 or 10 acre parcel that was just a great parcel. Everyone believed it was a great parcel, and we actually purchased that, or an easement. But let's say we purchased this 5 or 10 acre parcel. Now we got this parcel of land that the city owns. What do you do with it? Well, maybe now it's a passive park. You don't do a lot of development. Maybe you have the Boy Scouts or someone out there and make a trail, right? And it's 5 or 10 acres. So now you got a passive park. It's very passive, but it's also your rural view shed. It's also your open space and green space. It's many different things.
So what makes that 5 to 10 acre parcel great for us to buy? I guess.
And I think we talked about this at the last meeting. If it meets several of the criteria, whatever our criteria comes, and it meets all of those criteria, that's why the criterion is so important. And it meets all of those criteria. Oh wow, this is great, and it meets all of this criteria. And in addition, it can be a passive park.
Preserves wildlife. It's wooded.
It provides trail or greenway connection.
Okay,
It does all of that.
Right.
If you've got a piece that does all of that. And
it was otherwise going to be developed, right? It was otherwise maybe going to be developed.
I'm all about it. I'm going to vote for it. But
you
got to add some stuff.
It would have to be a swimming hole, swimming pool.
Swimming hole
But
park.
if it meets those criteria, then maybe you don't purchase all of it. Maybe you just purchase just part of it. To preserve that part of it. I don't know. I mean,
and that's going to depend on the landowner. Everyone's going to be different.
I mean, because we're going to get into a situation where the amount of money that we would have to spend to buy up some of these parcels of land exhausts what we're going to have in the bond.
Yes.
I'm going to let Laura make a comment. She's itching.
I've been thinking about this since Mark said it, and I want this to be successful too. But it occurred to me when you said what you said, we have a lot of people that run businesses here in this community, equestrian businesses. And, I mean, it's tight. It's hard to make money keeping horses on grass. I know it seems like it should be easy, but it's not. And so I don't know what kind of money we're talking about. I guess y'all don't even know yet either. But somewhere in this, and I'll make it quick, if these businesses that provide green space, these operations that, if there's any way to have a hardship or a waiver or something, some criteria to say, I mean, I don't know what we're talking about in terms of money, and this is just a one-year thing, right? Or, I don't know.
What do you mean 1 year? It's a 30-year bond.
Okay, so even more importantly,
or maybe.
We do not want to make it so that these folks can't stay here and provide the green space that's way bigger than what we'll ever be able to buy or do with these bonds. We don't want to run them out of here. Okay.
No, that's a good point.
Rhinefield Farm on Birmingham, I mean, it's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
I know them. It's tight. I mean, 3 customers leave, and you're not going to make your lease payment. So, I mean, I couldn't sit through this without helping you to remember the given private green space that we have. I mean, we don't want to run those people off, And I'm thinking primarily about the businesses, but there's also private residences too. So, I mean, I think maybe if this is ongoing, you need to think about that and the ongoing tax burden to the community that already is providing a lot of green
Now,
That's,
Laura,
yeah,
will say-
I would email city, I mean, just to be honest with you, that's a great point, and I'd email city council that, and I would talk to them, really.
But isn't that part of
Really?
the point? I mean, that's what the
But-
easement.
Well,
that's what the
easement's
easement-
all
Right,
about.
yeah.
I mean,
So-
that landowner can
I mean,
come to
that's
the
a-
city and say, you know what? I don't want to build on my land, and
So-
I'd like to make some extra money. So
Give me
I'll
some-
sell you
yeah.
part of my land. I want to put into an easement for
Mhm.
you for
Yeah.
the city to own, and you're going to pay me in return
Yes.
for that.
The front 500
And they
feet.
get a tax
Yeah.
benefit
Whatever.
on top
Yes.
of
A
that.
mile.
So I think part of it is
So it does- I
educating.
mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
That's where I see.
So
most of
they
this
get
as
money
being-
for the
that's
easement,
where I see
right?
most
If
of
they
it
say,
being.
we don't want to
Done.
develop this land, you
Shake
put the
hands.
easement, they get
Walk
money for
away.
the easement, and then in addition,
So you
because
got
they have a
500
conservation
foot
easement, they
shed
get
along all the
a tax
major roads.
tax break.
And
So
I haven't
that,
really lost hardly any
two
money.
things that could help them, money for the easement and the tax break.
It's
like a tax incentive.
But you're saying that those are.
Oh, even on big parcels, I mean, you know.
Like
as
if you
long
want
as
an
it hits the
easement, like
criteria.
let's say we determined the view shed's a good 200 feet. You know, the city could buy 200 feet of easement on your property, and I mean that would definitely offset some of the tax costs. But you bring up a very good point.
That's,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
but the landowner still uses it like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
his. It's
Right.
Yes, and it's
just
not
got an
public
easement, he can
access,
run on it.
yeah.
Exactly.
It's not public access?
It's not public, you do not have to, so conservation
not.
easements, you write in the restrictions, okay?
So
So you
I-
can put public access or
Or
not.
So it sounds like it's flexible, which is good.
Yes.
I
Mhm.
just am sitting
We
here
want it to
thinking,
be
oh my
flexible.
God, we're gonna run all these people out of town, because I'm just saying, right over the Cherokee border, it's already happening, because, I mean, you can just make better money, it's a hard business to succeed.
Well, I think this could have the opportunity to help those people
So
through this.
That information, I love to, because people talk, and they're like, that would be really good information to get out quickly. How it affects, because, Equestrian is a stakeholder group.
Mhm.
That would be a really important group to let them, know, and I'd be happy to help get the information.
Okay, great.
Well, I mean,
Okay,
to Mark's
thank
point about, what does this mean for me? I mean, I live in
Thank you,
Crooked
Laura.
Creek, so I mean, what it means is it keeps the look and feel of the city. Like you said, if I'm driving all these roads and I'm in a car with a real estate agent, and I'm like, this place looks amazing, I want to live here.
Right, it's your
There you
property
go.
values,
Yeah.
even if you don't live next to it, it's your property values because you live in
Yeah,
there.
you're right.
Because, like you said,
exactly
because
right.
I still think the biggest part of this is going to be extending that unbuildable buffer along all of our roads. That's the easiest part to me for all this.
With the rural view shed.
Yeah, instead of, because we're trying to do it through these AG1 enhancements. You know what? The easier thing to do is just offer to buy it. With this, with
100% agree with that.
With this bond referendum, you know
Or
what?
easement it, however we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
On
it would
a
pay for
piece one.
the easement too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people could just give
some
you an
mix.
easement.
And
but,
everybody's not going to say yes, but some people will say
Right.
yes.
We just have to show we have to show a benefit for everyone.
Yes.
Right.
somehow.
Yes.
Well, if
You
it
know.
if it keeps the rural feel, right, and that's what people say, and then it helps your property values
Well,
because
the
you live.
feel and
I
money.
think.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's
Because
about
the
money.
demand for living here is going to, maintain where it is or go higher because. it's
And
gonna be
if you
completely different
preserve
from anywhere else.
some of that space, that's less people in schools. I have kids, small
Yeah,
kids,
or like
young
you said,
kids,
the build-
and that's a big deal. Less kids in my school, less
Yep.
overcrowding.
And the
in the schools.
buildable land, like Julie keeps bringing up the buildable land. I mean, the less land that they can build houses on, that means fewer houses that I'm competing with when I sell my house.
Mhm.
So I mean, I would rather, again, buildable land is a big piece of it for me.
Would that be under what category would
Well, I mean,
you?
preserve buildable land. I mean, it was one of
So-
the lists
so
on
don't-
the bigger one.
We're not going to go buy a lake. We're not going to. I mean, I think the priority
Or a floodplain.
yeah.
Or,
Right,
or,
it
you know,
really falls into, if you look at the
creek or-
categories that Kathy had here
Even though
before,
lake
that's,
might be a good thing.
that's a preservation of green space or open space or view shed. And that's something that we should be willing to invest in.
Mhm.
Or talk to the landowner about the easement. So if it's all about buying, you're never going to have anybody say,
No.
"Hey, I'm so willing to give you an easement," because
Well, there was not
which
enough
may not
money.
cost
25
us
million
anything.
is not enough.
Because otherwise,
money
they're going to
close.
say, "Oh, I'll just hang out till they're ready to offer me some money." Then you can have it.
Is that the number or
Well, I mean, that's the minimum number we're talking about.
okay?
Yeah, and it might vary from that a little bit, and that depends on when they go and talk to the banks and how much they can get the bond for and how much the
Yeah.
rates are and
It's
all
all,
that.
it's like being qualified for a mortgage. I mean, we have to be able to pay it back. We have to be able to.
And then it's how much the taxpayers are willing to,
Well, how much can we stomach?
can you stand
Yeah.
to pay more in your taxes?
Right.
And that is a big part of the amount, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we have the broad, general idea of kind of where we're going with it.
All right, so are there any you think in what we talked about tonight and tomorrow night that does not?
I still think at some point, just because the survey had 27% of people wanted the Greenway connection and stuff.
Let me tell you,
worried.
I want you to look at the last page too. So 27% is, I did the survey in two different ways, and I'm not a mathematician, but that's just the total number of responses.
Right.
But if you look at all of the criteria named in all of the responses, there was 800 and, I think there was 800 and something criteria.
And I'm not saying it has to be the first priority, but
yeah, but it was 56% of the people named trails as one of those things. That was just the biggest thing. And those trails, and to define them, they're all different. Some are like horse trails, some are walking, some are bike, some are unpaved, some are gravel. It's all over the map with the trails. But trails was a big thing. And I don't know if it's because of one of the examples in the survey, but there is something to note that was the highest, by a lot. And some of that stuff, like Jack said, hopefully can be done by easements. But it might not be all of it to be able to get especially if it's along the road or.
Well, it's kind of down the path what I was saying before. There's the I'm not engaged in it stuff, but I see it, and it preserves a feel for Milton.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the stuff that I'm engaged with, where I'm actively participating in it. I'm going to be on a trail, or I'm going to be in the passive park, or I'm going to ride my bike down the road. And as Walt talked about, I think you need a couple extra feet here and there for where the cycling community does ride. And there's a pretty consistent path that they take because it's a great workout. You know that area is not all of Milton, but it's a part of Milton that could be defined as, okay, it's X number of miles of roads that whatever it's called, peloton, rides on a regular basis. And maybe that's part of the trail thing. So there's the stuff that I'm engaged in that needs to be a series of measures that we make. And there's the passive. Passive stuff, meaning things you drive by, things you look at that create the look and feel of Milton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like trails is more recreation. Like a lot of people mentioned in the survey, they want to be able to walk somewhere. For the people that don't live down in the south part of Milton, which I don't, you want to be able to walk somewhere. I can't walk anywhere. I live up in Northwest. I can't walk anywhere. So a lot of those people that can't walk anywhere, it's like, can I just do it? I don't want to drive to have to walk. I have to drive to walk, And so a lot of people mentioned that. I just want to be able to walk for exercise.
If you take
trail.
If you go back to the list, Kathy, that we comprised from the community input the other day, there's probably 24, 25 things on that list.
Mm-hmm.
Half of those can go into one of two categories. By the way, I was describing it just now. Like if I was labeling ones versus twos. So let me give you a list of my ones.
Okay.
And it's not by ranking, it's just identifying a difference between the one versus the other. So like a one, or the first area, or first grouping is floodplains areas for trails, areas that would help wildlife preservation. And you skip all the way down to forested and tree areas, continuity of land for wildlife and create corridors, preserve land and keep it in its rural state, preserve the rural feel, contiguous parcels, and wildlife protection. Those can all go in the same category.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the other grouping I was talking about. So these are things I'd labeled as twos, only, again, for the sake of differentiation. And under that category falls passive parks. Birmingham Park put in a conservation easement. Trail connections to Greenway and Alfred and Forsyth. Leverage existing trails. Prioritize trail creation and acquisition. Those are all twos.
Mm-hmm.
And that's already that's already 12 of the 24, 25 things that are on here.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't finish my little personal project with the other ones that are on here to see how many more groupings there are, but that's only two groupings that captures half of what the community input was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can take those ones and twos and apply them to those other four that Gary was looking at earlier. Because all the ones would fall into that first grouping of
Yeah.
4 things that you identified.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree. And then the twos you mentioned would go into the path.
Provides trails, a greenway
Yeah.
connection,
Mostly that.
and parks.
Yeah.
Trails and parks.
Yeah.
'Cause that's like recreation. Almost what you think of it as recreation. You're walking on a trail. You're going through a passive park.
Passive rec. Passive rec.
Yeah.
So my only
Without saying rec-
comment there would be, what are we spending now out of our general fund, so to speak, on trails? I mean, it's more than nothing. So I mean, to advertise this to somebody as if some like myself voting on this, I'd want to know how much out of my taxes already are going to trails and connecting trails and the master trail plan, et cetera.
Well, I know.
Now I'm going to be.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to pay more for that,
Yeah.
which is fine. Possibly,
And I don't know
but-
how much is going through from the budget is going to trails.
I know they have this separate.
There's
They have a
there's
separate fund. I
Separate
know
fund.
Yeah.
that necessarily we're not paying taxes that go into that, but I guess.
Well, I mean,
Well,
my
you are
property
paying- you are
taxes
paying-
are part
Right,
of the general
right,
fund.
but isn't there a separate development fund that the
Oh, yeah,
Developers
yeah.
put in-
Talk
So
about
I was
that,
curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, out
You know
of the
about
general. Yeah, I guess out of the general fund. I guess.
But
it would be.
remember, as a part of every tax dollar you pay, when the city creates the budget, there's a line item in there.
Oh yeah.
No, he's talking about like the sidewalks that the developers
Right.
pay.
I'm
the
going to
fund
go there.
that-
I was going to go there next.
yeah.
So part of your tax dollar that you pay goes into a line item in the budget today.
And it's
Then,
online.
To
I
your
mean,
point,
that's
Chris,
everyone
is the other part is there's other money coming in from other resources. It's-
Yeah, I know Carter is. That T-Splosh and that transportation
We went to
plan.
R, I guess.
He's trying to do the connection to the Greenway through that. That's one of his projects, right? That he's trying to, if that passes, get money from that
But
for that
also,
connection.
to Chris's point, you're going to have,
the next step.
if we do impact fees, impact fees can go in.
Yeah,
So it's
one
another
of the
source
things
of
I said,
impact.
that can go into a lot of this. That could go into trails and preservation of,
Or it's not even well, I guess it's impact fees. Remember the discussion we had last time about, I don't know if it was directly associated with this, but what if we said, okay, no more sidewalks and curb and gutter are required in any development, and it goes into a fund for the city's discretion to apply the where that goes.
Like a-
In some
like a trail
areas,
fund.
We may
Yeah.
develop sidewalks and curb and gutter, but that would be the city's choice to put it somewhere rather than it's being developed at the point of that development of that piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to what Peyton offered up at one point, which is, work from the city center out. So all of a sudden, those trails become more choreographed than all this sort of hit and miss stuff.
I thought we were already doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no,
Isn't
it's
that
not officially.
That's what we
I
thought might be the
that was
plan.
the direction, that we're going in.
We've said that.
Not
but
I
I
thought that was presented to us.
But I don't think anybody's adopted that as an
No.
absolute at
Oh,
this point,
all
have they?
No,
Kathy
we-
or Robin?
April. Some of the AG1 changes, we might see that stuff.
Well, in
Correct.
terms of the trails, it's been determined that we won't require any developers to put in trails.
Right.
That money, that is a really,
Impact
the
fee.
system improvement, it's not a project improvement. The system improvement, that means that it's the city's responsibility to do it.
Yeah,
And we can certainly use our impact fees for that.
right.
Or other funds, whatever, but.
We haven't made a formal
it won't be
decision.
required
It's been determined?
But we haven't made a formal decision
As of
that's,
when?
that's now
Was it-
a directive from the city where it says to the development community, if you're gonna build a neighborhood,
A done
you don't
deal,
have
is
to
it?
do curb and gutter and sidewalks.
Nobody told me. I didn't get the memo.
Right.
Carter is writing some
right.
language that reflects that.
Yeah,
We
good.
haven't
So that's-
discussed it yet.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's what our clear direction is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought Carter presented to us, again, the trail system is already being built out from whatever community nodes.
There's not much city funds at this.
There's not a lot of money for it.
No.
There's the plan. The plan
Yeah.
is like we'd like to have it all of this, but they're not there.
No,
I mean, a little
yeah.
bit.
No,
here
I
and there.
agree. Yeah.
So there needs to be money to actually do it, and they're.
At this point, it's been developed, but now they've determined that we can't do that anymore.
So, Kathy, so for our next meeting, I know you young lady would like to speak, and you've been here through the rezoning and everything. So, absolutely. Yeah, I think.
have a lot of floodplain
one of these maps, is the floodplain.
Which really would be natural because they are.
Did they put it down, Kathy, when they, was it on one of the easels that they put down so they could see us?
Yeah, there is an inventory of, they have all the unbuildable land and all the floodplains. Yep, you got it.
It's already a nature preserve. The guy's got a cow on this one and a horse on that one and a deer on that one.
You guys
Because he
argument.
can't build on it.
That's all. Just argument. Been that way all night.
We're wrapping this up. You good? Okay.
You good? Can't see the forest through the trees. Just wait till they all get
This is a great opportunity, didn't I?
When they clear coated, you'll see them that way.
You know what?
So Kathy, I'm going to wrap this up. So for our next meeting, I guess from what Paul said, as far as the groupings are concerned, I think maybe you can start getting some wording, I guess, down for those groupings, and we'll do that for our next meeting, which will be tomorrow night. Just joking, April.
Well, there was some confusion. There's no meeting tomorrow night.
No, it's not tomorrow night. No, it's like April. What's our next meeting?
April 14th.
April 14th.
Is
then
the
you pay your
next-
taxes.
That's
next
the
day.
that's the workshop one.
Yeah.
That's the.
So we'll get a lot
executive
done
con-
at the workshop since there won't be a CUP rezoning. So we're good.
Well, there might be.
Hey,
it's,
no,
it's a special
maybe
meeting.
at the end of April. So I'm gonna call for an adjournment. Are y'all good?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. All's in favor?
Ding ding.
Aye. All right.
Okay, so the 13th.